Welcome to Luminous Lore and Rituals. In this video, you'll journey into the captivating world of Norse mythology with tales from The Children of Odin by Padraic Colum. Get ready to meet the mighty gods and goddesses of Asgard. As we dive into these ancient sagas, you might wonder, what secrets does Odin hold? Will Thor's strength be enough to face the challenges ahead? Each story promises to unveil the rich lore of the Norse pantheon while providing a calming atmosphere for your evening wind down. With our soft-spoken narration and soothing soundscapes, you can trust that this experience will help you relax and reflect. This unique blend of storytelling and gentle visuals is designed to support your journey into restful sleep. If you enjoy this mythic adventure, please like and subscribe for more enchanting folklore, guided meditations, and calming content that nurtures your soulful practice. Let's begin our exploration of Norse legends.
The Children of Odin, the Book of Northern Myths, by Padraic Colum. Part 1, The Dwellers in Asgard. Chapter 1, Far away and long ago, once there was another sun and another moon, not the Sol and Mani we know now, but different ones with the very same names. Behind each of them, there followed a wolf. At last the wolves caught them. They devoured Sol and Mani. Then the world lay in darkness and cold. In those days the gods still lived. Odin and Thor, Hoda and Baldur, Tyr and Heimdall, Vidar and Vali, and Loki, who could do both good and evil. The goddesses were there too: Frigga, Freya, Nanna, Iduna, and Sif. But when the sun and the moon were destroyed, most of the gods perished as well. Only a few remained: Vidar and Vali, sons of Odin, and Modi and Magni, sons of Thor. Baldur had already died before those last terrible events. Men and women still walked the world then. Before the sun and moon were devoured, and before the gods' doom, great calamities fell on the earth. Snow lay on the four corners of the world, and kept falling for 3 seasons. Winds swept everything away. Those who survived fought one another, brother against brother, until people were no more. There was besides another earth, green and beautiful. But fierce winds tore down forests, hills, and homes. Fire followed and burned the land. Darkness reigned, for Sol and Mani were gone. The gods met their doom. All of these events belong to a single time: Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Afterward, a new sun and a new moon rose and traveled the heavens, lovelier than the first and with no wolves in pursuit. The earth grew green again. In a deep forest, spared by the fires, a man and a woman awoke. Odin had hidden them there and left them to sleep through Ragnarok. Her name was Lith, his name was Ulfraser. They walked the renewed world, and from their children and grandchildren the human race was reborn. Of the gods, Vidar and Vali remained, and Modi and Magni. Vidar and Vala found tablets the old gods had left behind, records of all that had happened before Ragnarok. The people who lived after Ragnarok were no longer plagued by the terrible beings who had once waged war against the gods and destroyed the older world. Chapter 2, The Building of the Wall. There had been war between the giants and the gods. Giants who would destroy the world and humankind, and gods who would protect men and make the world fairer. Many stories follow about the gods, but the first one to tell is how they built their city. The gods climbed to the top of a high mountain and resolved to build a great city the giants could never overthrow. They named it Asgard, the place of the gods, and chose a fine plain on the mountain's summit. Around that city they wished to raise the highest and strongest wall that had ever been built. One day, as they began to raise halls and palaces, a strange being came to them. Odin, the father of the gods, spoke first. "What do you want on the mountain of the gods?" he asked the stranger. "I know what the gods have in mind," the stranger replied. "You will build a city. I cannot build palaces, but I can raise walls that cannot be overthrown. Let me build the wall around your city." "How long will it take you?" asked Odin. "A year, O Odin," said the stranger. Odin understood that with a great wall the gods need not spend all their days defending Asgard. Protected, Odin himself could go among men to teach and help them. No payment the stranger might demand seemed too high for such work. The stranger came before the council and swore he would finish in 1 year. Odin swore in turn that if the wall were finished to the last stone by that day, The gods would give him whatever he asked. The stranger returned the next day, the first day of summer, and began work. He brought no helpers but a great horse. The gods thought the horse would merely haul stone. Instead, the horse did far more. It placed the stones and mortared them. Day and night, in light and in dark, the horse labored, and the great wall rose swiftly about the palaces. What will he ask for his reward? The gods wondered. Odin went to the stranger. We marvel at your work, he said. What reward will you claim? Tell us, and we will provide it. The stranger stopped his labor and answered, O father of the gods, O Odin, I shall claim the sun and the moon, and Freya, who watches over flowers and grasses, for my wife. Odin was filled with great anger. The price was monstrous. He told the rest of the gods. They cried out that without the sun and moon the world would wither, and that without Freya Asgard would be shrouded in gloom. They preferred the wall unfinished to yielding so vast a ransom. But Loki, who was among them, half-god, son of a wind giant, spoke up. Let the stranger build the wall, he said. I will find a way to make him forfeit his claim. Tell him the last stone must be laid by the first day of summer, and if it is not, he shall receive nothing. So they told the stranger the condition. He was indeed a giant. The giant and his great horse labored faster. At night, while the giant slept, the horse worked on, hauling and laying stones. Day by day the wall neared completion. Still the gods took no comfort. If the work finished by the appointed day, the giant would take Sol and Mani and win Freya for his wife. Loki, however, kept his calm, promising he would stop the giant. 3 days stood between them and the summer deadline. Only the gateway remained unfinished. 1 stone to go. The giant, before sleep, ordered his horse to haul the great block of stone so they might place it above the gateway in the morning and finish 2 days early. On a beautiful moonlit night, Svaelfari, the giant's great horse, hauled the largest stone he had ever hauled when a little mare came galloping toward him. The great horse had never seen so pretty a mare and watched her in surprise. Svaelfari, slave, the little mare said as she frisked past. Svaelfari set down his stone and called after her. She returned. Why do you call me slave? He asked. Because you must work night and day for your master, the mare replied. He keeps you always at the task. You dare not leave that stone and come play. Who says I dare not? Svaelfari asked. I know you dare not, the little mare said, and she cantered off across the moonlit meadow. The truth was that Svaelfari was weary of endless labor. Seeing the mare, he grew suddenly discontent. He left his stone and followed her. He could not catch her. She ran lightly, looking back now and then. Down the mountainside she led him, and Svaelfari, rejoicing in freedom, followed. At dawn they neared a cave. The mare slipped into it, and they went through. The mare told stories of dwarfs and elves. They came to a grove and stayed, playing until the great horse forgot the passing of time. When morning came, the giant went to lift the stone for the gateway and found it gone. He called for Svaelfari, but the horse did not answer. He searched the mountainside and the giant realms and all the earth, but he found no trace. The gods watched the first day of summer dawn with the gateway still unfinished. They agreed that if the wall remained incomplete by evening, the giant would receive neither Sol, nor Mani, nor Freya. The hours passed. The giant did not lift the stone. In the evening he appeared before them. Your work is incomplete, Odin said. You forced us into a hard bargain. Now we need not keep it. You shall not have Sol and Mani, nor the maiden Freya. The wall I have built is so strong I would tear it down, the giant cried, and he strove to cast down a palace. The gods laid hands on him and thrust him beyond the wall. Go, and trouble Asgard no more, Odin commanded. Loki returned to Asgard and told how he had transformed himself into the little mare and lured Svaelfari away. The gods sat in their golden halls behind the great wall and rejoiced that their city was secure and no enemy could overthrow it. Yet Odin, sitting upon his throne, felt sorrow. The wall had been won by a trick, oaths broken and an injustice done, and this weighed upon him. Chapter 3. Iduna and her apples. How Loki put the gods in danger. In Asgard there was a garden. And in that garden grew a tree bearing shining apples. You know, dear listener, that every day makes us older. Time bends us, makes us gray-headed and weak-eyed. But the shining apples of Asgard had a different power. Whoever ate them each day grew not a day older. The apples kept old age away. Iduna, the goddess, tended that tree. None could care for it, but she. Only Iduna could pluck the shining apples. Each morning she'd gather them in her basket, and every day the gods and goddesses came to her garden to eat them and remain ever young. Iduna never left her garden. She stayed there or in her golden house beside it, and all day she listened to Bragi, her husband, spin a never-ending tale. But a time came when Iduna and her apples were lost to Asgard, and then the gods and goddesses felt old age creeping near. How that happened must now be told. Odin often traveled in the lands of men to watch over their doings. Once he took Loki with him. Loki, who could do both good and ill. They journeyed long, and at last came near Jotunheim, the giant's realm. The country there was bleak and empty. Nothing grew, no trees, no berries, no birds, no animals. Hunger came upon them. Loki, running this way and that, at last found a herd of wild cattle. He crept upon them, caught a young bull, and killed it. He cut the meat in strips, lit a fire, and set the flesh to roast. While the meat cooked, Odin sat a little way off, thinking of what he had seen among men. Loki kept adding logs to the fire. At last he called Odin to eat. But when Odin took the meat to cut it, he found that it was still raw. He smiled at Loki, who had mistaken doneness, and Loki, troubled by his mistake, put the meat back and added more wood. Again he took it off the spits and called Odin. Odin, when he took the meat that Loki brought him, found it as raw as if it had never been put upon the fire. "Is this a trick of yours, Loki?" he asked. Loki was so angry at the meats being uncooked that Odin saw he was playing no tricks. Hungry, he raged at the meat and he raged at the fire. Again he put the meat on the spits and heaped more logs on the flames. Every hour he lifted the meat, certain it must now be done. Every time it was as raw as at first. Odin knew the giant's enchantment must be at work. Strong but still hungry, he went his way. Loki, however, would not leave the meat on the fire. He vowed he would have it cooked and would not go away hungry. At dawn he lifted the meat once more. A whir of wings sounded above his head. Looking up he saw a mighty eagle, the largest that had ever appeared in the sky. The bird circled and came over Loki. "Can't you cook thy food?" the eagle screamed. "I cannot cook it," Loki answered. "I will cook it for thee, if thou wilt give me a share," the eagle shouted. "Come then, and cook it," Loki said. The eagle hovered over the fire and, flapping those great wings, made the flames blaze with a heat Loki had never felt. In a minute the meat was well cooked. My share, give me my share," the eagle screamed. He swooped, seized a large piece, and devoured it. Piece after piece he took until it looked as if Loki would be left with nothing. As the eagle seized the last piece, Loki grew angry. Taking up the spit, he struck at the bird. There was a clang as if he had struck metal, though it did not come free. It stuck fast to the eagle's breast. Loki would not let go. Suddenly the eagle rose, and Loki, clinging to the spit fixed to the bird's breast, was drawn up with him. Before he knew what had happened, Loki found himself miles in the air, borne by the eagle toward Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. The bird screamed, "Loki, friend Loki, I have thee at last. It was thou who didst cheat my brother of his reward for building the wall round Asgard. But Loki, I have thee at last. Know now that Thiassi the giant has captured thee. O Loki, most cunning of the dwellers in Asgard." They passed over the river that divides Jotunheim from Midgard, the world of men. Beneath lay a terrible land of ice and rock. Great mountains, lighted not by sun or moon, but by columns of fire spurting through cracks. Over a great iceberg the eagle hovered. He shook the spit from his breast, and Loki fell upon the ice. The eagle screamed, "Thou art in my power at last, O most cunning of the dwellers in Asgard," and flew into a cleft in the mountain. Miserable indeed was Loki upon that iceberg. The cold was deadly. He could not die there. He was one of the dwellers in Asgard, and yet he felt bound to the ice with chains of cold. After a day, his captor came to him, no longer an eagle, but Thiassi the giant in his own form. Wouldst thou leave thy iceberg, Loki, and return to thy pleasant place in Asgard? Thou dost delight in Asgard, though by half only thou belongest to the gods. Thy father, Loki, was the wind giant. Oh, that I might leave this iceberg, Loki said, tears freezing on his face. Thou mayst leave it when thou showest thyself ready to pay thy ransom to me, Thiassi answered. Thou must fetch the shining apples that Iduna keeps in her basket. I cannot get Iduna's apples for thee, Thiassi, Loki said. Then stay upon the iceberg, said Thiassi, and left him to the winds that buffeted him like hammer blows. When he next came and spoke of ransom, Loki said, there is no way of getting Iduna's shining apples. There must be some way. O cunning Loki, the giant insisted. Iduna, though she guards the apples well, is simple-minded, Loki said. Maybe I can make her go outside Asgard's wall. If she goes, she will take her basket with her. She never lets the apples leave her hand except to give them to the gods. Make it so that she will go beyond Asgard's wall, the giant demanded. If she goes outside, I shall get the apples. Swear by Yggdrasil, the world tree, that thou wilt lure Iduna beyond the wall. Swear it, Loki, and I shall let thee go. I swear it by Yggdrasil that I will lure Iduna beyond Asgard's wall. If thou wilt take me off this iceberg, Loki swore. Thiassi changed himself into a mighty eagle, took Loki in his talons, crossed the stream between Jotunheim and Midgard, and left Loki on human ground. Loki then went on to Asgard. Odin had already returned and told the dwellers in Asgard of Loki's attempt to cook the enchanted meat. They laughed at Loki's hunger and at his cunning. When he came into Asgard looking famished, they mocked him further, but they brought him into the feast hall and gave him the best food and wine from Odin's cup. After the feast, as usual, the gods and goddesses went to Iduna's garden. There sat Iduna in her golden house, fair and simple, one who, had she been seen among men, would have reminded all who saw her of their own innocence. Her eyes were as blue as the sky, and she smiled as if thinking of lovely things. Beside her lay the basket of shining apples. To each god and goddess she gave a shining apple. Each ate and rejoiced, knowing youth would be theirs day by day. Odin spoke the runes in her praise, and the dwellers in Asgard left the garden for their shining houses, all except Loki. He sat watching Iduna. At length she spoke. Why do you stay, wise Loki? To look well on thine apples, Loki said. I wonder if the apples I saw yesterday are as shining as those in thy basket. There are no apples in the world so shining as mine, Iduna replied. The apples I saw were more shining, and they smelled sweeter, Loki insisted. Troubled, Iduna's eyes filled with tears to think there might be apples more shining than hers. O Loki, she said, it cannot be. None are so shining, none so sweet. Go and see, Loki said. Just outside Asgard grows the tree with the apples I saw. Thou, Iduna, dost never leave thy garden, and so thou knowest not what grows in the world. Go outside the wall and see. I will go, Loki, the fair and simple Iduna answered. She went just beyond Asgard's wall to the place Loki had named. As she looked about, she heard a whir of wings. A mighty eagle swooped down, the largest eagle that had ever appeared in the sky. Iduna drew back toward Asgard's gate, but the eagle seized her, lifted her up, and carried her away, over Midgard, toward the rocks and snows of Jotunheim. Across the river that flows between Midgard and Jotunheim, the eagle bore her and flew into a mountain cleft. There, in a cavern lit by columns of fire, the eagle loosened his grip, his wings and feathers fell, and Iduna saw her captor as a terrible giant. Oh, why have you carried me off from Asgard? She cried. That I might eat your shining apples, Iduna, Thiassi said. That will never be. I will not give them to you, she answered. Give them to me, and I will carry you back to Asgard, he tempted. No, I cannot. I am trusted to give the apples only to the gods. Then I shall take them from you. Thiassi took the basket and opened it. When he touched the apples, they shriveled in his hands. He set the basket down. He knew the apples would be of no use unless Iduna herself gave them. "You must stay here until you give me the apples," he said. Poor Iduna was frightened of the cave, of the fire that burst from the earth, of the terrible giant. And above all, she feared what would befall Asgard if she were not there to give the gods their apples. Thiassi returned daily to trouble her. She would not yield. Each night, she dreamed the dwellers in Asgard coming to her garden and finding no hands to pluck the apples. Day by day, she saw in her dreams the gods growing changed. They no longer walked lightly, shoulders bent, their eyes lost dew-like brightness. She saw Frigga gray and old, Sif's golden hair fade, Odin's wisdom cloud, Thor's strength fail. The gods were saddened. Their shining city seemed to lose its light. Where was Iduna? The gods searched Midgard in vain. Odin, searching with his wisdom, summoned Hugin and Munin, his two ravens who flew through the earth and the realm of the giants, and knew things past and things to come. They came, one on his right shoulder, one on his left, and told him the deep secret of Thiassi and his desire for the shining apples, and of Loki's deception. What Odin learned was told in the council. Then Thor the Strong seized Loki. "What wouldst thou with me, O Thor?" Loki cried. "I would hurl thee into a chasm and crush thee with my thunder," Thor answered. "It was thou who caused Iduna's going from Asgard. O Thor, do not crush me. Let me remain. I will strive to win Iduna back. The judgment of the gods is that thou, cunning one, go to Jotunheim and by craft win Iduna back. Go, or I will hurl thee into a chasm and crush thee with my thunder." "I will go," Loki said. From Frigga, Loki borrowed her dress of falcon feathers. Clad as a falcon, he flew to Jotunheim. He searched until he found Thiassi's daughter, Skadi. He flew before her. She caught him and kept him as a pet. One day, Skadi carried the falcon, Loki, to the cave where Iduna was held. When Loki saw Iduna, part of his task was done. He stayed not with the giant maid, but flew into the high rocks. Skadi wept for her lost pet, but ceased to search. Loki went to where Iduna sat and spoke to her. She wept with joy to learn one of the dwellers in Asgard was near. Loki told her what to do. By a spell, he could change her into a sparrow. Before she changed, she took the shining apples and flung them into places where the giant could not find them. Skadi returned to the cave to find the falcon gone. She cried out to her father. Thiassi knew the falcon to be Loki and the sparrow to be Iduna. He changed himself into a mighty eagle and gave chase. The sparrow and falcon flew with all speed. The eagle, stronger, gained on them. Standing upon Asgard's wall, the dwellers saw the falcon and sparrow and the great eagle pursuing. Loki and Iduna with Thiassi in pursuit. As they watched the eagle winging nearer and nearer, the dwellers in Asgard feared that the falcon and the sparrow would be seized, and that Iduna would be taken again by Thiassi. They lighted great fires upon the wall, knowing that Loki would find a way through the flames, bringing Iduna with him, but that Thiassi would not. The falcon and the sparrow flew toward the fires. Loki went between the flames and brought Iduna with him. Thiassi, coming up to the fires and finding no way through, beat his wings against the flames. He fell down from the wall, and the death that followed was laid to Loki. Thus Iduna was brought back to Asgard. Once again she sat in the golden house that opened to her garden. Once again she plucked the shining apples from the tree she tended, and once again she gave them to the dwellers in Asgard. The dwellers walked lightly again. Brightness came into their eyes and their cheeks. Age no more approached them. Youth returned. Light and joy were again in Asgard. Chapter 4. Sif's Golden Hair. How Loki wrought mischief in Asgard. All who dwelt in Asgard, the Aesir and the Aesir, the gods and the goddesses, and the Vanir, their friends, were wroth with Loki. No wonder. He had let the giant Thiassi carry off Iduna and her golden apples. Yet their show of wrath only made Loki ready for further mischief. One day he saw his chance. Sif, Thor's wife, lay asleep outside her house. Her beautiful golden hair flowed all around her. Loki knew how much Thor loved that shining hair, and how dearly Sif prized it because of Thor's love. Here, then, was the opportunity for a great wrong. Smiling, Loki took out his shears and cut off Sif's shining hair, every strand and tress. She did not wake while her treasure was taken. When he left, Sif's head lay cropped and bare. Thor was away from Asgard. Returning to the city, he called for Sif. No glad answer came. He searched the palaces of the gods and goddesses, but she was in none of them. As he came back to his house, he heard his name whispered. He stopped, and a figure stole out from behind a stone. A veil covered her head. Thor scarcely knew her. As he approached, she sobbed. "O Thor, my husband," she said, "do not look upon me. I am ashamed that you should see me. I shall go from Asgard and from the company of the gods, and I shall go down to Svartheim and live among the dwarfs. I cannot bear that any of the dwellers in Asgard should look upon me now." "O Sif," cried Thor, "what has happened to change you?" "I have lost the hair of my head," she answered. "I have lost the beautiful golden hair that you, Thor, loved. You will not love me anymore, and so I must go away to Svartheim in the company of the dwarfs. They're as ugly as I am now." Then she lifted the veil. Thor saw that all her beautiful hair was gone. She stood before him shamed and sorrowful. He was filled with mighty rage. "Who did this to you, Sif?" he thundered. "I am Thor, the strongest of all the dwellers in Asgard, and I shall see that all the powers the gods possess are used to restore your beauty. Come with me, Sif." Taking his wife's hand, Thor went to the council house where the gods and goddesses met. Sif kept her head veiled, unwilling that the gods see her shorn brow. But Thor's anger spoke for itself. All saw how great the wrong was. Thor told of the cutting of her hair. A whisper ran through the council house. It was Loki who did this. No one else in Asgard would have done such a shameful deed. One said to another. "Loki it was," said Thor. "He has hidden himself, but I shall find him and slay him." "Nay, not so, Thor," said Odin, the All-Father. "No dweller in Asgard may slay another. I shall summon Loki to appear before us. It is for you, Loki, to make amends. And remember that Loki is cunning and able to do many things. Restore to Sif the beauty of her hair." Odin's call went through the city of gods. Loki heard it. He could not remain hidden. He entered the house where the gods held council. When he saw Thor's rage and Odin's sternness, he knew he must repair the wrong he had done. "I shall do as you command, Odin All-Father," he said. "Before we follow Loki's attempt to restore Sif's hair, we must tell of other beings in the world. First, the Vanir. When the Aesir built Asgard, they found other folk upon the mountain, beautiful and friendly. These were the Vanir. Though amiable, the Vanir had no thought of making the world more beautiful or happier in the way the Aesir did. Still, they lived in peace with the Aesir and helped in certain ways. Freya, whom the giants sought as reward for the building of Asgard's wall, belonged to the Vanir. The Vanir included Frey, Freya's brother, and Njord, their father. Upon the earth below, there were the dainty elves, who tended trees, flowers, and grasses. The Vanir were permitted to rule over the elves. Below the earth, in caves and hollows, dwelt the dwarfs, or gnomes, little twisted folk, both ugly and crafty, yet the best craftsmen in the world. In days when neither the Aesir nor the Vanir were friendly to him, Loki often went down to Svartheim, the dwarfs' realm. Now, tasked with restoring Sif's beauty, he sought their help. Down through winding passages, he went until he found his dwarf friends at their forges. They were beating metals into shapes. One made a spear so well balanced that it would hit whatever mark it was thrown at, no matter the aim. Another made a boat that could sail any sea and yet fold up to slip into a pocket. The spear was called Gungnir, the boat Skidbladnir. Loki praised the dwarfs' craft and promised them things only the dwellers in Asgard could give, promises the little folk desired. He urged them to take a bar of the finest gold and hammer it into threads as fine as Sif's hair. Flattered, they threw the bar into the fire, drew it out, and beat it upon their anvil until it yielded to their skill. Again and again they worked, until the threads were as fine as the hairs on Sif's head, bright as sunlight, so delicate they could lie in Loki's palm and hardly be felt by a bird. Loki praised them yet more, and, before leaving, took the spear and the boat from them, Gungnir and Skidbladnir. Back in Asgard, he walked into the council house where the dwellers were gathered. Meeting Odin's stern look and Thor's wrath, he kept his smiling humor. "Off with thy veil, O Sif," he said. When Sif removed it, he laid upon her shorn head the fine mass of gold threads. The shining web fell over her shoulders, soft and bright as her own hair. The Aesir and the Vanir laughed and clapped in gladness. The gold held to Sif's head as though it had roots and were indeed growing there. Chapter 5. How Brock brought judgment on Loki. Having won back favor by restoring Sif's beauty, Loki produced the other wonders he had gained from the dwarves, the spear Gungnir and the boat Skidbladnir. The Aesir and Vanir marveled. Loki gave Gungnir to Odin and Skidbladnir to Freya. To show off, Loki boasted, "None but the dwarfs who work for me could make such things. Other dwarfs are unhandy and misshapen. The dwarfs who serve me are the only ones who can make such wonders." Unknown to Loki, one of those other dwarfs stood in the shadow of Odin's seat, listening. It was Brock, the most spiteful of the dwarfs. He stepped forward and roared, "Ha! Loki, you boaster, you lie. Sindri, my brother, who scorns to serve you, is the best smith in Svartalfheim." The Aesir and Vanir laughed to see Loki taken down. Loki answered, "Be silent, dwarf. Your brother will learn smith's work from the dwarfs who are my friends. My brother learns from your friends." Brock shouted, "I'll wager my head against yours that Sindri's work will put yours to shame." "I accept," said Loki. "My head for yours. I shall be glad to see that ugly head of yours off your misshapen shoulders." "The Aesir will judge," Brock cried, and the gods agreed. Brock hurried to Svartalfheim and found Sindri at his forge, amid bellows, anvils, and masses of metal, gold, silver, copper, and iron. "You were right," said Sindri. "We will not lose, but we must work together. You will tend the bellows so that the fire neither blazes up nor dies down for a single instant. Keep it steady." Into the fire Sindri threw. No ordinary metal, but a pig's skin. Brock took his place at the bellows and kept the flame steady. The pigskin swelled and took form. Sindri spoke words of magic over the shape, and when he called the work done, the thing was wondrous. A golden boar that could fly through the air and shed light from its bristles. Brock forgot his pain and shouted with joy. "This is the greatest wonder," he cried. "The dwellers in Asgard must judge against Loki. I shall have his head." "But we must make yet more," Sindri said. "Work on." He flung into the fire a piece of gold so bright it lit the dark cavern. Sindri left Brock to the bellows. Once more a gadfly buzzed in. Loki in disguise, lighting upon Brock and stinging him until the pain seared through his hands and neck. Still Brock held to the bellows. Still the fire neither flamed nor died. When Sindri returned and looked in the fire, Brock could hardly speak for the pain he endured. Again Sindri spoke his words of magic over the glowing metal. He drew it from the fire and hammered it upon the main anvil. In time he showed Brock a thing that shone like the circle of the sun. "A splendid arm ring, my brother," Sindri said. "An arm ring for a god's right arm. This ring has hidden wonders. Every ninth night, 8 rings like itself will drop from it. This is Draupnir, the ring of increase. To Odin, the father of the gods, the ring shall be given," Brock cried. "Odin will have to declare that nothing so wonderful or so profitable was ever brought into Asgard. O Loki, cunning Loki, I shall have thy head in spite of thy tricks." "Be not hasty, brother," Sindri answered. "What we have done so far is good, but still better must be made. Something that will compel the dwellers in Asgard to give judgment for us. Work as before, brother, and let the fire neither blaze up nor die down for a single instant." This time Sindri threw into the flames a bar of iron. He went away to fetch the hammer that would shape it. Brock kept the bellows, though his whole body trembled with dread of the gadfly. The gadfly darted into the forge and circled him. It lighted upon his forehead, just between the eyes. The first sting took the sight from him. It stung again, and he felt the blood trickle down. Darkness filled the cavern. Brock struggled to keep his hands steady on the bellows. He could not tell whether the fire flamed or fell. He shouted, and Sindri hurried back. Sindri spoke his words of magic over the thing in the fire and drew it forth. An instant more, he said, and the work would have been perfect. But because the fire died down for a moment, the work is not as it might have been. He set the piece upon the anvil and shaped it. When Brock's sight returned, he saw a great hammer, head formed of iron. The handle seemed too short to balance it. That shortness was because the fire had waned for an instant while it was formed. The hammer is Mjolnir, Sindri said, and it is the greatest of the things I can make. All in Asgard must rejoice to see this hammer. Thor alone will be able to wield it. Now I fear not the judgment of the dwellers in Asgard. The dwellers in Asgard must give judgment for us, Brock shouted. They will, and Loki's head shall be mine. No more wonderful or more profitable gifts have ever been brought into Asgard, Sindri declared. Thy head is saved, and thou shalt take the head of Loki the ensign. Bring it here, and we will cast it into the forge. When the Aesir and the Vanir were seated in the council house, a train of dwarfs entered. Brock led them, followed by bearers carrying great things. They stood about Odin's throne and listened to the words of the All-Father. We know why you have come from Svarthand, Odin said. Show what you have brought. If these are more wonderful and useful than Loki's spear Gungnir and the boat Skidbladnir, we will give judgment to you. Brock bade his attendants show the first wonder. They brought forth Golden Bristle, the boar. Around the council house the boar flew, leaving a path of light. The dwellers called it a marvel, though none said it was better than Gungnir or Skidbladnir. To Frey, chief of the Vanir, Brock presented the golden boar. Next came the arm ring, bright as the sun. All admired it. When they learned that every ninth night it shed 8 rings like itself, the dwellers spoke aloud that Draupnir, the ring of increase, was indeed a wonder. Brock looked triumphantly at Loki. To Odin, Brock gave the noble arm ring. Then Brock bade the dwarfs lay before Thor the hammer Mjolnir. Thor lifted it and swung it about his head, and a great cry went up. The eyes of the dwellers brightened. This is a wonder, they cried. With this hammer, none can withstand Thor. No greater thing has come into Asgard. From his throne, Odin spoke judgment. The hammer Mjolnir that Brock has brought is a wondrous and profitable thing. In Thor's hands, it can crush mountains and hurl the giant race from Asgard's ramparts. Sindri has forged a greater thing than Gungnir and Skidbladnir. There could be no other judgment. Brock showed his gnarled teeth at Loki. Now, Loki, yield thy head, he cried. Do not ask such a thing, Odin said. Put any other penalty on Loki for his mocking and torment. Make him yield what is in his power to give. Not so, Brock screamed. You dwellers would shield one another. But what of me? Loki would have taken my head had I lost. He has lost his head to me. Let him kneel now, till I cut it off. Loki stepped forward, smiling with closed lips. I kneel before thee, dwarf, he said. Take off my head, but be careful, do not touch my neck. I did not bargain that you should touch my neck. If you do, I shall call upon the dwellers in Asgard to punish you. Brock recoiled with a snarl. Is this the judgment of the gods? He snarled. The bargain you made was an evil one, Odin answered, and its evil consequences you must bear. Chapter 6. How Freya gained her necklace, and how her loved one was lost to her. Loki moved through Asgard silent and bowed, and the dwellers said, This will teach Loki to work no more mischief. They did not know that Loki's doings had sown seeds of future trouble, seeds that would bring sorrow to the fair Vanir, Freya, whom the giant had sought to carry off with the sun and moon as his reward for building Asgard's wall. Freya had seen the wonders Loki had brought, the golden threads that became Sif's hair, and Frey's boar that shed light as it flew. The gleam of these things dazzled her and made her daydream of treasures she might own. Often she thought what wonders the 3 giant women would give me if I would go to them on a mountaintop. Long before, when the wall around Asgard was not yet built and the gods had set up only their court with 12 seats in the halls of Odin and the goddesses, 3 giant women had come into Asgard. They came after the gods had set up a forge and begun to work with pure gold. With that gold they built Gladsheim, the Hall of Odin, and made all their dishes and household ware. Then was the Age of Gold. The gods wasted no gold, and no shadow lay on Asgard. But after the 3 giant women came, the gods began to value and hoard gold. They played with it no more, and the innocence of those first days departed. At last the 3 were banished. The gods turned from hoarding and set to building their city, making themselves strong. Now Freya, the fair Vanir bride, looked back to the giant women and the marvels of gold that had flashed through their hands. She did not tell Oder. Her husband, Oder, more than any other, dwelt in memory of the days before gold was hoarded and would have forbade her going near the giant women's mouth. But why should Oder know I went, she told herself. No one will tell him. What harm if I go and win lovely things for myself? I shall not love Oder the less because I go my own way once. So one day she left her palace, leaving Oder playing with her child Nasa. She tended flowers upon the earth for a time, then asked the elves where the giant women's mountain stood. The elves, afraid, would not tell even their queen. She descended into the dwarfs' caves. They showed her the way, after making her endure shame and misery. We will show you if you stay with us, one dwarf said. For how long? Freya asked. Until the cocks of Svartheim crow, the dwarfs replied, closing round her. We would know what the company of one of the Vanir is like. I will stay, Freya answered. A dwarf put his arms about her neck and kissed her with his ugly mouth. Freya struggled. They held her. You cannot go until the cocks of Svartheim crow, they said. One after another pressed near, kissed her. They made her sit on their skins. When she wept, they screamed and beat her. One bit her hand when she refused his mouth. So Freya remained until the cocks of Svartheim crew. At last they showed her the mountain where the 3, banished from Asgard, had their seat. The giant women sat overlooking Midgard. What would you have from us? Wife of Oder, asked one called Gulbert. Alas, now that I have found you, I know I should ask for naught, Freya said. Speak. Vanna, said the second giant woman. The third held up a necklace of gold, curiously wrought. How bright it is! Freya cried. There is a shadow where you sit, yet this necklace makes it bright. How gladly I would wear it. It is the necklace Brisingamen, said Gulbert. It is yours to wear, wife of Oder, said the one who held it. Freya took the shining necklace and clasped it about her throat. She could not bring herself to thank them. She saw evil in their eyes, but she bowed and departed the mountain. Down below, she looked upon Brisingamen and her sorrow lifted. It was the most beautiful handiwork she had seen. None among the Aesir or the Vanir possessed such a thing. It made her lovelier, and she thought Oder would forgive her when he saw how the necklace brightened her. She rose from among the flowers, left the elves, and hastened back into Asgard. All who greeted her looked long at the necklace. Longing came into the eyes of the goddesses. Freya scarcely stopped to speak. Quickly she returned to her palace to show Oder and win his pardon. She entered and called to him. There was no answer. Her child Nasa played upon the floor. The child, seeing Brisingamen, turned away and cried. Freya searched the palace and all houses in Asgard for Oder. None knew where he had gone. At last Frigga, queen among the goddesses, came to her. You wait for Oder, your husband, Frigga said. He will not come. He went when, for the sake of a shining thing. You did what would make him unhappy. Oder has left Asgard, and no one knows where to seek him. I will seek him outside of Asgard, Freya said. She wept no more. She put the little child Nasa into Frigga's arms, mounted her cart drawn by 2 cats, and journeyed down from Asgard to Midgard, the earth, to search for Oder, her husband. Year after year, and all over the earth, Freya went seeking and calling for the lost Oder. She traveled to the very bounds of the world, where she could look toward Jotunheim, the land of the giants, the realm of the one who would have carried her off with the sun and the moon as payment for building Asgard's wall. Yet from the end of Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that arched from Asgard to the earth, to the borders of Jotunheim, she found no trace of Oder. At last, she turned her chariot toward Bifrost. Heimdall, the watcher for the gods, guarded the rainbow bridge. To him Freya went with a half-hope fluttering in her heart. O Heimdall, she cried. "O Heimdall, watcher for the gods, speak and tell me if you know where Odin is." "Odin is in every place where the searcher has not come. Odin is in every place that the searcher has left. Those who seek him will never find Odin," said Heimdall, the watcher for the gods. Then Freya stood upon Bifrost and wept. Frigga, the queenly goddess, heard her lament and came out of Asgard to comfort her. "Ah, what comfort can you give me, Frigga?" cried Freya. "What comfort can you give me when Odin will never be found by one who searches for him?" "Behold how your daughter, the child Nasa, has grown," said Frigga. Freya looked up and saw a beautiful maiden standing upon Bifrost. She was younger than any of the Vanir or the Aesir. Her face and form were so lovely that all hearts melted at the sight. Freya felt a small comfort in her loss. She followed Frigga across Bifrost and returned to the city of the gods. In her palace in Asgard, she dwelt again with Nasa, her child. Still she wore Brisingamen, the necklace that had cost her Odin. Yet now she wore it not for pride, but as a sign of the wrong she had done. She wept, and her tears fell as golden drops upon the earth. Poets who know her story call her the beautiful lady in tears. Chapter 7. How Fry won Gerda, the giant maiden, and how he lost his magic sword. Fry, chief of the Vanir, longed to see his sister, who had been absent from Asgard for so long. This longing came during the time when Freya wandered the world in search of Odin. In Asgard there stood a place from which one might look all over the world. Hlidskjalf, Odin's lofty watchtower. The tower rose high into the blue. Fry climbed it and found Odin absent. Only the two wolves, Jerry and Freki, crouched beside the All-Father's seat. They barred his way. Fry spoke to them in the language of the gods, and they let him pass. As he climbed the inner steps to the top, Fry felt that he was doing a fateful thing. None of the high gods, not Thor, the defender of Asgard, nor Baldur, the best beloved, had ever sat upon Odin's seat. "But if I could see my sister but once, I should be content," Fry told himself. "No harm can come if I look." He seated himself upon Odin's high place and looked out. He saw Midgard, the world of men, its towns and fields. Beyond Midgard, he saw Jotunheim, the giant's realm, terrible with dark mountains and snow. He saw Freya in her wanderings, her face turned toward Asgard. He took some comfort, thinking himself satisfied. Even so, his gaze lingered on a dwelling standing amid ice and snow. The door opened and a giant maiden stood framed in the doorway. Her beauty shone like starlight amid the dark. She glanced from the doorway, turned, and went inside, shutting the door. Fry sat long on the seat of Odin. He descended the tower at last and passed the wolves, who now bared their teeth and would not let him by, though he spoke again in the god's tongue. He wandered through Asgard and found no one to please him. Sleep fled him. His thoughts were fixed upon the maiden he had seen. At dawn he returned to Hlidskjalf, hoping for another glimpse, but the wolves still barred him. He went to his father, the wise Njord. "She whom you saw is Gerda, daughter of the giant Jimmer," Njord said. "Give up thinking of her. Your love would harm you." "Why should it harm me?" Fry asked. "Because you must give up what you prize most to win her," Njord answered. "What I prize most is my magic sword," said Fry. "You will have to give the sword," Njord said. "I will give it," Fry answered, loosening the sword from his belt. "Think, my son," Njord warned. "If thou givest thy sword, what weapon wilt thou have on the day of Ragnarok, when the giants shall rise against the gods?" Fry fell silent. He thought the day of Ragnarok far away. "I cannot live without Gerda," he said at last. There was in Asgard one named Skirnir, venturesome, reckless, careless of speech. To no one else could Fry speak of the trouble that had fallen upon him for sitting in Odin's seat. Skirnir laughed at the tale. "Thou, a Van, in love with a maid of Jotunheim. This is sport. Wilt thou make a marriage of it?" "Would that I might even speak to her or send a message," Fry said. "But I cannot leave my watch over the elves." "If I should carry thy message to Gerda," Skirnir asked, "what reward shall I have?" "My boat Skibladner or my boar golden bristle," answered Fry. "No," Skirnir said. "I would have something in my side, something to hold in my hand. Give me thy magic sword." Freya remembered Njord's warning that without the sword, he would be weaponless at Ragnarok. He hesitated while Skirnir laughed. Then Freya thought, Ragnarok is far off. I cannot live without Gerda. He drew forth his magic sword and placed it in Skirnir's hand. I give thee my sword, Skirnir, he said. Show Gerda gold and jewels, and tell her I love her and claim her love. I shall bring the maid to thee, Skirnir answered. How wilt thou reach Jotunheim? Freya asked. With a good horse and a good sword one may go anywhere, Skirnir replied. Tomorrow I will ride. Skirnir rode across Bifrost, laughing at Heimdall, the warder. His horse trod Midgard, swam the river that parts men's world from Jotunheim, and rode on. From the iron forest came monstrous wolves to devour him. Frey's magic sword gleamed. Its edge slew the beasts, and its light affrighted them. He came to a wall of fire, through which only his horse could pass. He rode it through and reached the dale of Gymir's dwelling. He found a great hound's baying, but the sword's gleam kept them at bay. He struck the door with his horse's hoofs. Gymir sat feasting and did not hear. Gerda sat spinning with her maidens. Who comes to Gymir's door? She asked. A warrior upon a mighty horse, said one maiden. Even though he be an enemy who slew my brother, let us open and give him Gymir's mead, said another. One maiden opened the door. Skirnir entered and found Gerda among the women. He displayed the gold and jewels Freya had sent. These are for thee, fairest Gerda, he said, if thou wilt give thy love to Freya. Show thy trinkets to other maidens, Gerda replied. Gold and jewels will not win my love. Skirnir then drew the magic sword and held it over her. Give thy love to Freya, who gave me this sword, or meet death by its edge. Gerda laughed. Make the daughters of men fear the sharpness of Frey's sword, she said, but do not try to frighten a giant's daughter with it. Skirnir made the sword flash and hiss, and spoke a spell. Gerda, I will curse thee. With this magic blade, I shall touch thee. Such is its power, that like a thistle, withered it shall leave thee, like a thistle the wind, strips from the roof. Hearing the words and the sword's strange hiss, Gerda threw herself down and cried for pity. Skirnir stood over her. The blade hissed and flashed. He chanted, More ugly I'll leave thee, the maid ever was. Thou wilt be mocked by men and giants. A dwarf only shall wed thee. Now on this instant, with this blade, I shall touch thee, and leave thee bespelled. Gerda rose on her knees and entreated Skirnir to spare her. Only if thou wilt give thy love to Freya, he said. I will give my love to him, Gerda answered. Now sheathe thy sword, drink a cup of mead, and depart. I will not drink thy mead, nor depart until thou swear to meet Freya. Skirnir replied. I will meet him, Gerda said. When? Asked Skirnir. In the woods of Bari, 9 nights hence. Let him come and meet me there. Skirnir sheathed the sword, drank the mead she gave, and rode away, laughing that he had won Gerda for Freya, and thus made the magic sword his forever. Skirnir returned across Bifrost, and found Freya waiting by Heimdall. What news? Cried Freya. In 9 nights thou shalt meet Gerda in Bari Wood, Skirnir said. Long were the 9 days to Freya. At last the evening of the 9th came, and Freya went to Bari Wood. There he met Gerda as promised. She was as fair as when first he had seen her at Gymir's door. When she saw Freya, the giant's daughter rejoiced that Skirnir had compelled her promise. They exchanged rings of gold. It was settled that Gerda should come as Frey's bride to Asgard. When Gerda came, another giant maid came also. This is how it befell. All the dwellers in Asgard were gathered at the great gate to welcome Frey's bride. A giant maiden came forward, not Gerda, but in full armor. I am Skadi, she said, daughter of Thiassi. My father met his death at the hands of the dwellers in Asgard. I demand recompense. What recompense would you have, maiden? Odin asked, smiling at her boldness. A husband from among you, even as Gerda, and I shall have leave to choose him. They all laughed. Odin said, We shall let thee choose, but thou must choose by his feet. I will choose as you will, Skadi answered, and fixed her eyes on Baldur, the most beautiful of the dwellers. They bound her eyes. The gods and Vanir sat in a half circle. As she passed, she stooped and touched the feet of each. At last she found feet so fair she thought they belonged to Baldur. "This is he I choose," she said. The Aesir and Vanir laughed and removed the bandage. She had chosen not Baldur, but Njord, Frey's father. Yet as Skadi looked upon Njord, she grew content with her choice. He was strong and noble. Njord and Skadi first lived in Njord's palace by the sea. But the sea's cry woke Skadi too early. She moved her husband to the mountaintop where she felt at home. He could not long be without the sea's sound, and they went back and forth between mountain and sea. Gerda remained in Asgard with Frey, and the Aesir and Vanir came to love her dearly. Chapter 8. Heimdall and Little Nasa, How All Things Came to Be. Nasa, the child of Freya and the lost Odin, was the youngest of all the dwellers in Asgard. Because it was prophesied that the child might bring her father and mother together, little Nasa was often taken outside the city to stand by Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, so that if Odin's steps turned toward Asgard, she might greet him. In all the palaces of the city of the gods, little Nasa was made welcome. She visited Fensaler, the halls of mists, where Frigga, the wife of Odin Allfather, sat spinning with golden threads. Brigdablik, where Baldur, the well-beloved, lived with his fair wife, the young Nanna, and Bilskirner, the winding house, where Thor and Sif dwelt. She even went to Odin's own palace, Valisjaff, roofed over with silver shields. The greatest palace of all was Gladsheim, built beside the golden-leaved wood glacier. Here the gods held their banquets. Often Nasa appeared within and saw Odin Allfather at the table, a blue mantle over him, a shining helmet shaped like an eagle upon his head. Odin ate little. He drank the wine of the gods and took the food from the table to give to Jerry and Freki, the two wolves crouched by his seat. She loved to sit outside the great gate with Heimdall, the warder of the Rainbow Bridge. When there were no travelers, she would sit beside him and listen to the wonders he told. Heimdall held a horn called Gjallarhorn. He sounded it to let the dwellers in Asgard know when someone crossed the Rainbow Bridge. He told Nasa how he had trained himself to hear the grasses grow, how he could see all around for 100 miles, how he could see by night as well as by day, and that he never slept. He told her he had 9 mothers, and that he fed on the strength of the earth and the cold sea. Day after day, as she sat beside him, Heimdall told Nasa how all things began. He had lived from the beginning, he said, and knew all things. Before Asgard was built, he said, and before Odin lived, earth and sea and sky were all mixed together. What was then was the chasm of chasms. In the north was Niflheim, the place of deadly cold. In the south was Muspelheim, the land of fire. In Niflheim was a cauldron called Hvagelmur that poured out 12 rivers into the chasm of chasms. Ginnungagap, the chasm of chasms, filled with ice as the rivers froze upon entering it. From Muspelheim came clouds of fire that turned the ice into thick mists. The mists fell again as drops of dew, and from those drops was formed Ymir, the ancient giant. Ymir traveled along the 12 rivers until he came to another living thing standing in the mists, a giant cow named Audhumla. Ymir lay beside her and drank her milk, and on that milk he lived. Other beings were formed from the dew that fell. They were the daughters of the frost. Ymir married one of them, and their children were the giants. One day Ymir saw Audhumla breathe on a cliff of ice and lick the place she breathed upon. As her tongue moved, a figure was forming, more shapely, more beautiful than a giant. A head appeared in the cliff, and golden hair fell over the ice. Ymir hated the being for his beauty. Audhumla kept licking the ice. At last a man stepped forth. He was not a giant. Ymir would have slain him, but he feared that if he did, Audhumla would cease to feed him. Bur was the name of the man formed from the ice, Bur, the first of the heroes. He too lived on Audhumla's milk. He married a daughter of the ancient giant and had a son. Ymir and his sons hated Bur, and at last they killed him. War came between Ymir and Ymir's sons, and the son and sons of Bur-Odin was the son of Bur's son. Odin gathered his brothers, and they destroyed Ymir and his brood, except one. Ymir was so vast that when slain his blood flooded the world, drowning his sons save Bergelmir, who floated away in a boat with his wife to the place now called Jotunheim. the realm of the giants. Odin and his brothers took Ymir's body, the vastest body that ever was, and filled the chasm of chasms with it. They dug out his bones and piled them as mountains. They made the teeth into rocks. They made his hair into forests. They formed his eyebrows into the place where men now dwell, Midgard. From Ymir's hollow skull they made the sky. They did yet more. They took sparks and clouds of flame from Muspelheim and made them into the sun, the moon, and all the stars. Odin found a dusky giantess named Night, whose son was Day, and gave them horses to drive across the sky. Night drove Hrimfax, frosty mane, and Day drove Skinfax, shining mane. From Hrimfax bit fall the drops that make the dew upon the earth. Then Odin and his brothers made a race of men and women and gave them Midgard. Ugly dwarfs had grown up beneath the earth. Odin made them dwell in the hollow places below. The elves he let stay on the earth, setting them to tend streams, grasses, and flowers. And after a war with the Vanir, Odin made peace and took Njord as a hostage. Bergelmir, the giant who escaped Ymir's flood, had children in Jotunheim. They hated Odin and strove against him. When Odin lit the world with sun and moon, they were wroth and set the fiercest wolves of Jotunheim to pursue them. Even now the sun and moon, Sol and Mani, are followed by the wolves of Jotunheim. Such were the wonders Heimdall with the golden teeth told Nasa, the youngest of the dwellers in Asgard. Often the child sat with him by the rainbow bridge and watched the gods pass to and from Midgard. Thor, crowned with stars, bearing the great hammer Mjolnir and the iron gloves he used when he grasped it. Thor in a chariot drawn by 2 goats, wearing the belt that doubled his strength. Frigga in a dress of falcon feathers, flying swiftly. And Odin All-Father, riding Sleipnir, his 8-legged steed, clad in golden armor, wearing his eagle-shaped golden helmet and holding his spear Gungnir. Heimdall kept his horn in a branch of a great tree called Yggdrasil, a wonder to gods and men. No one knows of a time when Yggdrasil was not growing, he told Nasa, and all are afraid to speak of the time when it will be destroyed. Yggdrasil has 3 roots. One goes deep under Midgard, another under Jotunheim, and the third grows above Asgard. Over Odin's hall, a branch of Yggdrasil grows, called the Peace Bough. You see Yggdrasil, little Nasa, but you do not know all its wonders. Far up in its branches, 4 stags graze. They shake water from their horns that falls as rain on them. On the topmost branch, there is an eagle that knows all things. Upon the eagle's beak, a hawk sits, a hawk that sees what even the eagle cannot. The root of Yggdrasil that reaches Midgard goes down to the place of the dead. There an evil dragon named Nidhogg gnaws constantly at the root, striving to destroy the tree of trees. Ratatosk, the squirrel of mischief, runs up and down Yggdrasil, carrying tails between the eagle above and the dragon below. He tells the dragon that the eagle plans to tear him to pieces, and tells the eagle that the dragon plans to devour him. His stories make Nidhogg more fierce. There are 2 wells by Yggdrasil roots, one above and one below. One beside the root in Jotunheim is a well of knowledge guarded by old Mimir the Wise. Whoever drinks from it knows all that will come to be. The other is by the root above Asgard. No one may drink from it. The 3 holy Norns guard it, and they take the white water from it to water Yggdrasil, so the tree of life may remain green and strong. This well is Urda's well. Nasa heard that by Urda's well 2 beautiful white swans made music often heard in Asgard. She was too young to hear the swans' music yet. Chapter 9. The All-Father's Forebodings. How he leaves Asgard. Odin had 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin. Each day, they flew through all the worlds and returned to light on his shoulders and tell him what they had seen. Once a day passed without the ravens returning. Standing on a watchtower, Hlitsjaf, Odin said to himself, I fear me for Hugin, lest he come not back, but I watch more for Munin. A day passed, and the ravens returned, each settling on a shoulder. Odin then went into the council hall beside Glacier, the wood with leaves of gold, to hear what Hugin and Munin had to tell. They brought only shadows and forebodings. Odin told none of it to the dwellers in Asgard. Yet Frigga, his queen, saw the shadows in his eyes. When he spoke to her, she bade him, "Do not strive against what must take place. Let us go to the holy Norns by Urda's well, and see if these forebodings will remain when you look into their eyes." So Odin and the gods left Asgard and came to Urda's well, under the great root of Yggdrasil, where the three Norns sat, with the two fair swans below. Odin went with Tyr, the great swordsman, Baldur, the best beloved, and Thor with his hammer. A rainbow bridge led from Asgard to Midgard. Another rainbow, more tremulous and more beautiful, reached from Asgard to the root of Yggdrasil above Urda's well. Men seldom saw this bridge. Where the two rainbows met stood Heimdall, Heimdall with the golden teeth, watcher for the gods and keeper of the way to Urda's well. "Open the gate." "Heimdall," said Odin, "open the gate, for today the gods would visit the holy Norns." Without a word, Heimdall opened the gate to the more tremulous rainbow. Odin, Tyr, and Baldur stepped out on the bridge. Thor followed, but before his foot was placed on it, Heimdall laid his hand upon him. "The others may go, but you may not go that way, Thor," said Heimdall. "What? Would you, Heimdall, hold me back?" said Thor. "Yes, for I am keeper of the way to the Norns," Heimdall replied. "You with the mighty hammer are too weighty for this way. The bridge I guard would break under you." Thor with the hammer. "Nevertheless, I will go visit the Norns with Odin and my comrades," said Thor. "But not this way, Thor," said Heimdall. "I will not let the bridge be broken under you and your hammer. Leave your hammer here with me if you would go this way." "No," said Thor. "I will not leave in another's charge the hammer that defends Asgard. I may not be turned back from going with Odin and my comrades." "There is another way to Urda's well," said Heimdall. "Behold these two great cloud rivers, Kormt and Ermt. Canst thou wade through them? They are cold and suffocating, but they will bring thee to Urda's well, where the three holy Norns sit." Thor looked at the rolling cloud rivers. It was a hard way, cold and choking, but by it he could keep his hammer. He stepped into the cloud river that flowed by the rainbow bridge, and, hammer upon his shoulder, struggled through to the other river. Odin, Tyr, and Baldur were beside Urda's well when Thor came out of the cloud river, wet and choking, but with his hammer still upon his shoulder. Tyr stood upright and handsome, leaning on a sword inscribed with runes. Baldur smiled, head bent as he listened to the murmur of the two fair swans. Odin stood clad in a blue cloak fringed with golden stars, without his eagle helmet and with no spear in his hand. The three Norns, Urda, Verdandi, and Skulda, sat by the well in the hollow of Yggdrasil's root. Urda was ancient with white hair. Verdandi was now and beautiful. Skulda sat far back, her hair falling over face and eyes. Urda, Verdandi, and Skulda knew the whole of the past, the whole of the present, and the whole of the future. Odin looked long into their eyes. The others listened to the swans and the falling leaves of Yggdrasil into Urda's well. Looking into the Norns' eyes, Odin saw the shadows and forebodings that Hugin and Munin had told him. Others crossed the rainbow then. Frigga, Sif, and Nanna, the wives of Odin, Thor, and Baldur. Frigga looked upon the Norns, then cast a loving, sorrowful glance at Baldur and drew back to place her hand upon Nanna's head. Odin turned from the Norns and looked at Frigga. "I would leave Asgard for a while. Wife of Odin," he said. "Yeah," said Frigga. "Much has to be done in Midgard, the world of men. I would change what knowledge I have into wisdom," said Odin, "so that the things that are to happen will be changed into the best that may be." "You would go to Mimir's well," said Frigga. "I would go to Mimir's well," said Odin. "My husband go," said Frigga. They went back over that rainbow, more beautiful and more tremulous than the one men see from Earth. Over it went the Aesir and the Aesir, Odin and Frigga, Baldur and Nanna, Tyr with his sword, and Sif beside Tyr. Thor, however, went struggling through the cloud rivers Kormt and Ermt, his hammer Mjolnir upon his shoulder. Little Nasa, the youngest of the dwellers in Asgard, stood beside Heimdall, watcher for the gods and keeper of the bridge to Urda's well, when Odin and Frigga passed through the great gate with bowed heads. Tomorrow, Nasa heard Odin say, Tomorrow I shall be Vegtam the Wanderer upon the ways of Midgard and Jotunheim. Video title, Odin the Wanderer, Ancient Paths to Peaceful Sleep. Video intro, welcome, kindred souls, to luminous lore and rituals. If you're seeking a gentle journey into the ancient whispers of mythology for peaceful sleep, focused study, or soulful practice, you are in the perfect place. Settle in, breathe deep, and prepare to wander with Odin. Before we embark, a gentle reminder to like this video and subscribe to Luminous Lore and Rituals, ensuring you don't miss our weekly offerings of mythic storytelling, seasonal rites, and guided meditations designed to calm and inspire. Tonight, we continue our exploration with Odin the Wanderer, Ancient Paths to Peaceful Sleep. Have you ever felt a restless spirit within, a yearning for wisdom that only the journey itself can satisfy? Odin, the All-Father, often shed his grand attire, taking on the guise of cloaked wanderer. Why would the most powerful of gods choose such a humble path? What secrets did he seek, and what solace did he find on those ancient, winding roads through mist-shrouded forests, long before the dawn of our own memory? Here at Luminous Lore and Rituals, we believe in the power of these timeless tales, delivered with slow, calming narration and visuals steeped in gentle, long-wavelength hues designed to support your evening wind down without disturbing your precious melatonin. Let these ancestral stories, paired with our soothing soundscapes, guide you to a place of relaxation, reflection, and ultimately, peaceful rest. Tonight, let us follow the shadowed footsteps of Odin, discovering the wisdom embedded in his solitary quest.
Part 2, Odin the Wanderer. Chapter 1. Odin goes to Mimir's well, his sacrifice for wisdom. Odin no longer rode Sleipnir. He wore no golden armor, bore no spear. He had become Vegtam the Wanderer. Cloaked in dark blue and bearing a traveler's staff, he moved through Midgard toward Jotunheim and Mimir's well. On the way he met a giant riding a great stag. "Who art thou, O brother?" Odin asked. "I am Vafthrudnir, the wisest of the giants," replied the rider. Many sought wisdom from Vafthrudnir, and those who came had to answer his riddles. Fail and the giant took their heads. "I am Vegtam the Wanderer," Odin said. "I would strive to learn something from thee." The giant laughed. "Ho ho, I'm ready for a game. Know the stakes. My head to thee if I cannot answer any question thou wilt ask. If thou canst not answer any question I ask, then thy head goes to me. Oh ho ho, let us begin." "I am ready," Odin said. Vafthrudnir asked first, "Tell me the name of the river that divides Asgard from Jotunheim." "Ifling," Odin answered. "Ifling that is dead cold, yet never frozen." "Right," said the giant. "What are the names of the horses that day and night drive across the sky?" "Skinfax and Hrimfax," Odin replied. Vafthrudnir, startled to hear names known only to gods and the wisest of giants, asked one last question. "Tell me the name of the plain on which the last battle will be fought." "The plain of Vigard," said Odin, "a plain 100 miles long and 100 miles across." Now it was Odin's turn. He asked Vafthrudnir a question no one but Odin could ask. What will be the last words that Odin will whisper into the ear of Baldur, his dear son? The giant sprang down, looking at the wanderer keenly. "Only Odin knows what his last words to Baldur will be," he said. "Thou art Odin, O wanderer, and that question I cannot answer." "Then," said Odin, "answer me this. What price will Mimir ask for a draught from the well of wisdom that he guards?" "He will ask thy right eye as a price, O Odin," Vafthrudnir said. "Will he ask no less?" Odin asked. "No less," said the giant. "Many have come to him for a draught, but none yet has paid the price." "I give up my claim to thy head," Odin said. Vafthrudnir rode off upon his stag. The price was terrible. Odin almost turned back. To lose his right eye for all time, yet he pressed on. To the south he saw Muspelheim and Surtur with the flaming sword. To the north he heard Virgelmir pouring from Niflheim. He knew the world must not be left between fire and darkness. He, eldest of the gods, would win whatever wisdom he could to help save it. At last he came under the great root of Yggdrasil where Mimir sat, guardian of the well of wisdom, his deep eyes bent upon the deep water. Mimir, who drank daily from the well, knew the visitor. "Hail, Odin, eldest of the gods," he said. Odin made reverence. "I would drink from your well, Mimir." "There is a price to be paid," Mimir answered. All who have come here have shrunk from paying that price. Wilt thou pay it, eldest of the gods? I will not shrink from the price that has to be paid, Mimir, Odin said. Then drink. Mimir filled a great horn with water from the well and gave it to Odin. Odin took the horn with both hands and drank. As he drank, the future became plain to him. All sorrows and troubles that would fall on gods and men, and also why they must fall. He saw how, by facing sorrow nobly, gods and men might leave in the world a force that one day would destroy the evil that brought terror and despair. When he had drained the horn, Odin put his hand to his face and plucked out his right eye. The pain was terrible, yet he made no cry. He bowed his head and hid his face with his cloak while Mimir took the eye and let it sink deep into the well. There the eye shone in the water, a sign of the price the father of the gods had paid for wisdom. Chapter 2. Odin faces an evil man. In an earlier time, when his wisdom was less, Odin lived among men with Frigga on a bleak island. They were known then as Grimnir the fisherman and his wife. They watched over the sons of men, choosing which to foster and train for the work of saving the world from the giants. One day they saw the sons of King Hrothing and decided these boys might be forged into heroes. The boys went fishing. A storm drove their boat toward the island. Odin and Frigga took them in for the winter. Odin said, "We shall see which of the two can be formed into the noblest hero." Frigga favored the elder Agnir, gentle, quiet, thoughtful. Odin favored the younger Geirrid, strong, passionate, loud-voiced. Odin trained Geirrid in boldness, leaping from rock to rock, climbing cliffs, fighting at the bear's den. Agnir learned at Frigga's knee, listening to her tales and gaining wisdom. Each showed skill. Geirrid excelled in most trials. Spring came and Odin built a boat for both boys. Before they left, Odin told Geirrid, "Do not be too proud to receive a fisherman in your hall. A king should welcome the poorest who come." "I will be a hero," Geirrid answered. "And I would be king too, only Agnir Littlegood was born before me." They rowed toward King Hrothing's land. Near the castle, Geirrid did a cowardly thing. He turned the boat back to sea and cast the oars away, then swam for shore, strong enough to save himself, leaving Agnir adrift. Geirrid reached his father's castle. Agnir drifted away. King Hrothing, who had thought both sons lost, rejoiced to see Geirrid. He set him beside the throne. When the king died, Geirrid became king. Years later, Odin, now blind of one eye and wandering, came among men to judge kings and people with his new wisdom. He reached Geirrid's kingdom. Approaching the king's hall, men on dark horses rode ahead. The first rode so close the wanderer nearly was trampled. Only one servant tended the stable, Agnir. Odin knew at once who was who. He and Agnir entered the stable. Agnir broke bread, gave Odin straw to sit on. Odin said, "I would sit at the fire in the king's hall and eat my supper of meat." "Nay, stay here," Agnir begged. "The king is angry today, he might repulse you." "A king turns away a wanderer?" Odin replied. "It cannot be." Odin rose and went to the door. A hunchbacked porter barred it. "Not in this king's hall," the porter said. The king's voice called him away, and Odin strode into the hall. There sat Geirrid at table with dark-bearded, cruel men. Odin knew the boy he had trained had become leader of robbers. "Sing to us, wanderer," one of the dark men shouted. Odin stood between two stone pillars and sang a song that reproached the king and denounced those who followed his cruel ways. "Seize him," the king ordered. They threw chains round Odin and bound him between the stone pillars. "He came into this hall for warmth, and warmth he shall have," said Geirrid, and they heaped wood around him. The king himself set fire to the faggots. The flames played about Odin, but they did not burn him. When the wood had burned away, Odin remained, his terrible gaze fixed upon those hard men. They slept, leaving him chained. Odin could have broken free, but he wished to learn more of that house. The servants were ordered to bring him no food. Yet at dawn, when none were near, Agnir crept to Odin with a horn of ale and gave it to him. The next evening, after the king returned from his robberies and ate with his friends, he again ordered the faggots piled around Odin. Once more they watched with delight the fire playing round a living man. Again Odin stood unharmed, his terrible gaze deepening the king's hatred. All day he remained in chains, and servants were forbidden to bring him food or drink. Only Agnir secretly brought him a horn of ale at dawn. Night after night the same cruelty was done to Odin. For 8 nights they piled the faggots and set them ablaze. On the 9th night, when the fires were lit once more, Odin lifted his voice and began to sing. His song grew louder and louder until the king, his companions, and the servants had to stand still and listen. Odin sang of Geirrid the king, how the gods had given him strength and skill, and how, instead of using them nobly, he had become like a wild beast. He sang of the vengeance that was coming upon this ignoble ruler. As he sang, the flames died down. Where they had seen only a friendless wanderer before, the company now saw one who looked more kingly than any king of the earth. The chains fell from Odin's body and he advanced toward the evil men. Geirröd rushed at him with sword in hand. The blade struck, but Odin stood unhurt. Thy life runs out. The gods, they are wroth with thee. Draw near if thou canst. Odin, thou shalt see. In fear of that terrible gaze, Geirröd and his company shrank back. As they shrank, they were changed into beasts, into wolves that ranged the forest. Agnar stepped forward, and Odin declared him king. The people rejoiced. Geirröd's cruel reign was ended. Agnar proved to be both kind and strong, victorious in his rule. Chapter 3. Odin wins for men the magic mead. It was the dwarfs who brewed the magic mead, and it was the giants who hid it away. But it was Odin who brought it from the place where it was hidden and gave it to the sons of men. Those who drank of the magic mead became very wise, and not only that, but they could put their wisdom into such beautiful words that everyone who heard would love and remember it. The dwarfs brewed the magic mead through cruelty and villainy. They made it out of the blood of a man, Kvasir the poet. He had wisdom, and he had such beautiful words with it that what he said was loved and remembered by all. The dwarfs brought Kvasir down into their caverns and they killed him there. Now, they said, we have Kvasir's blood and Kvasir's wisdom. No one else will have his wisdom but us. They poured the blood into 3 jars, mixed it with honey, and from it they brewed the magic mead. Having killed a man, the dwarfs grew bolder. They came out of their caverns and went up and down through Midgard, the world of men. They went into Jotunheim and began to play their evil tricks on the most harmless of the giants. They found one giant who was very simple. His name was Gilling. They persuaded Gilling to row them out to sea in a boat. Then the 2 most cunning dwarfs, Galar and Filar, steered the boat onto a rock. The boat split. Gilling, who could not swim, drowned. The dwarfs clambered onto the wreck and came safely ashore. Delighted at their wickedness, they sought more mischief. Galar and Filar next led their band to Gilling's house and screamed out to his wife that Gilling was dead. She ran out weeping and clapping her hands. The 2 dwarfs had climbed onto the lintel, and as she came out, they dropped a millstone on her head. She fell dead. The dwarfs rejoiced in the destruction they had caused. They grew so insolent that they made songs boasting of how they had killed Kvasir the poet, Gilling the giant, and Gilling's wife. They remained around Jotunheim, tormenting whom they could and flattering themselves that they were great and strong. But they stayed too long. Suttung, Gilling's brother, tracked them down and captured them. Suttung was not simple like Gilling. He was cunning and covetous. Once the dwarfs were in his hands, escape was impossible. He left them on a rock in the sea, a rock the tide would cover. Suttung stood in the water taller than the rock. The incoming tide did not reach above his knees. He watched the dwarfs as the water rose and fear took them. "Oh, take us off the rock, good Suttung," they cried. "Take us off and we will give you gold and jewels. Take us off and we will give you a necklace as beautiful as Brisingamen." Suttung laughed. He had no need of gold. Then Filar and Galar cried, "Take us off the rock and we will give you the jars of the magic mead we have brewed." "The magic mead," said Suttung. "This is something no one else has. It might help us in battle against the gods. Yes, I will get the magic mead from them." He hauled the dwarfs off the rock but held Galar and Filar while the others went to fetch the jars. Suttung took the mead to a cavern in a mountain near his home. Thus the magic mead, brewed by the dwarfs through cruelty, came into the hands of the giants. And the tale now tells how Odin, the eldest of the gods, then living as Vegtam the Wanderer, took the magic mead from Suttung and brought it into the world of men. Suttung had a daughter named Gunnlod, whose goodness and beauty were like Gerda and Skadi, the giant maidens favored by the dwellers in Asgard. To guard the mead, Suttung enchanted Gunnlod, turning her into a witch with long teeth and sharp nails, and shut her in the cavern with the jars. Odin honored Kvasir above all men. The dwarfs who had slain him shut themselves in their caverns and never came out again into the world of men. Odin resolved to get the magic mead and give it to men so they might gain wisdom and speak it in words that all would love and remember. How Odin won the mead from Suttung's rock-covered cavern, and how he broke the spell on Gunnlod, is a story often told by the hearth. 9 strong thralls were mowing in a field when a wanderer in a dark blue cloak and carrying a staff passed by. One thrall called to him, "Tell them in the house of Boggy up yonder that I can mow no more until a whetstone to sharpen my scythe is sent to me." "Here is a whetstone," said the wanderer, drawing one from his belt. The thrall whetted his scythe and began to mow. The grass fell before it as if cut by the wind. "Give us the whetstone, give us the whetstone," cried the others. The wanderer tossed the whetstone among them and left them quarreling. The wanderer came to Boggy's house and was given supper. A messenger burst in from the field. "Boggy," he cried, "your 9 thralls are all dead. They killed each other fighting over a whetstone. There are no thralls left." "What shall I do?" said Boggy. "My fields will lie unmown. I shall have no hay for winter." "I might work for you," said the wanderer. "One man's work is no use," said Boggy. "I must have the work of 9. "I shall do the work of 9, the wanderer promised. He labored in the giant's field and performed the work of 9 men in a day. "Stay with me for the season," Boggy said, "and I shall reward you." Vegtam the wanderer stayed and worked. When the season's work was done, Boggy asked what reward he desired. "The only reward I shall ask," said Vegtam, "is a draught of the magic mead." "The magic mead?" said Boggy. "I do not know where it is or how to get it. Your brother Suttung has it. Go and claim a draught for me." Boggy went to Suttung. On hearing the request, Suttung raged. "A draught of the magic mead? To no one will I give a draught. Have I not enchanted my daughter Gunlod to watch it? You tell me a wanderer who has done the work of 9 asks for such a fee. O giant as foolish as Gilling. Off. Who would do such work and demand such a fee but one of our enemies, the Aesir? Go from me and never speak of the mead again." Boggy returned and told the wanderer. "I hold you to your bargain," said Vegtam. "You will get me the fee I asked for. Come with me and help me get it." He led Boggy to the cavern where the mead was hidden. Before the cavern lay a great mass of stone. "We cannot move that stone," Boggy said. "I cannot help you." The wanderer drew an auger from his belt. "This will bore through the rock if there is strength behind it. You have the strength, giant. Begin." Boggy took the auger and bored with all his might while the wanderer leaned on his staff, calm and majestic in his blue cloak. "I have made a deep, deep hole. It goes through the rock," Boggy at last declared. The wanderer went to the hole and blew into it. Dust flew back into their faces. "So that is your boasted strength, giant," he said. "You have not bored halfway. Work again." Boggy bored deeper. He blew into the hole and at last his breath passed through. He looked up. His eyes were fierce and he gripped the auger like a knife. "Look up to the head of the rock," said the wanderer. As Boggy looked, the wanderer changed himself into a snake and slipped into the hole. Boggy struck at him with the auger, hoping to kill him, but the snake slid through. Behind the rock was a hollow lit by shining crystals. Within it sat an ill-looking witch with long teeth and sharp nails, rocking and letting tears fall. "O youth and beauty," she sang, "O sight of men and women, sad, sad for me that I am shut away, with only this cavern and this horrible form." A snake glided across the floor. "Oh that you were deadly and would slay me," cried the witch. The snake passed. Then a soft voice spoke, "Gunlod, Gunlod." She turned and saw a majestic man in a dark blue cloak, Odin, the eldest of the gods. "You have come to take the magic mead my father has set me to guard," she cried. "You shall not have it. I will spill it upon the thirsty earth of the cavern first." "Gunlod," he said, and he came to her. She saw him and felt the red blood of youth return to her cheeks. She pressed her sharp-nailed hands to her breast and felt them pierce her flesh. "Save me from all this ugliness," she cried. "I will save you," Odin said. He took her hands and held them. He kissed her mouth. The marks of ill favor left her. She straightened. Her eyes became wide and deep blue, her mouth red, her hands soft and fair. She became as fair as Gerda, the giant maid whom Freya had wed. They looked at one another, then sat side by side and spoke softly, Odin, the eldest of the gods, and Gunlod, the beautiful giant maiden. She gave him the 3 jars of the magic mead and promised to go with him out of the cavern. For 3 days they stayed together. Then Odin, by his wisdom, found hidden paths and passages out of the cavern and brought Gunlod into the daylight. He carried with him the jars of the magic mead, the mead whose taste gives wisdom and the power to put that wisdom into words all love and remember. Gunlod, who had tasted a little of the mead, wandered the world singing of Odin's beauty and might, and of her love for him. Chapter 4. Odin tells Vidar, his silent son, the secret of his doings. It was not only to giants and to men that Odin showed himself when he went through Jotunheim and Midgard as Vegtam the Wanderer. He met gods too, some who lived far from Asgard and others who came into Midgard and Jotunheim. Far within a wilderness, with branches and tall grass growing around him, sat Vidar, Odin's silent son. Near him a horse grazed, saddled and always ready for a swift journey. Odin, then Vegtam the Wanderer, came into that quiet place and spoke to Vidar. "O Vidar," he said, "strangest of all my sons, God who will live when all of us have passed away, God who will bring the memory of the dwellers of Asgard into a world that will not know their power. Well do I know why the horse grazes near you, that you may spring upon it and ride unchecked, a son speeding to avenge his father. To you only, O Vidar the Silent One, will I speak the secrets of my doings. Who but you can know why I, Odin, the eldest of the gods, hung on the tree Yggdrasil 9 days and 9 nights, mine own spear transfixing me. I hung on that windy tree to learn the wisdom that would give me power in the 9 worlds. On the 9th night the runes of wisdom appeared before my eyes, and slipping down from the tree I took them to myself. And I shall tell why my ravens fly to you, carrying in their beaks scraps of leather. It is that you may make for yourself a sandal. With that sandal on you may put your foot on the lower jaw of a mighty wolf and rend him. All the shoemakers of the earth cast on the ground scraps of the leather they use so that you may be able to make the sandal for your wolf-rending foot. I have counseled the dwellers on earth to cut off the fingernails and toenails of their dead, lest from those nails the giants make for themselves the ship Naglfar, in which they will sail from the north on the day of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. More Vidar I will tell. Living among men I have wed the daughter of a hero. My son shall live as a mortal among mortals. Sigi is his name. From him shall spring heroes who will fill Valhalla, my own hall in Asgard, with champions for the day of our strife with the giants and with Surtur of the flaming sword. For a long time Odin stayed in that silent place, communing with his silent son, Vidar, who, with his brother, would outlive the dwellers of Asgard and carry the memory of the Aesir and the Vanir into another day and another world. At last Odin went across the wilderness where the grass and bushes grew and where the horse grazed, ready for the sudden journey. He went toward the seashore where the Aesir and the Vanir were gathered for the feast that old Aegir, king of the sea, had offered them. Chapter 5. Thor and Loki in the giant city. All but a few of the dwellers of Asgard had come to the feast offered by Aegir the Old, the giant king of the sea. Frigga was there and Freya and Freya, Iduna, keeper of the apples of youth, and Bragi, her husband, Tyr the great swordsman, Njord the sea god, Skadi who had wed Njord and hated Loki, and Sif, whose golden hair Loki once shorn. Thor and Loki were there. The dwellers of Asgard, gathered in Aegir's hall, waited for Odin. Before Odin came, Loki made the company merry with tales mocking Thor. His lips were long since freed from the thong the dwarf Brock had sewn them with, and Thor had forgiven the wrong done to Sif. Loki had traveled with Thor through Jotunheim and now told scoffing stories of those wanderings. He said he had seen Thor in his brass chariot, drawn by 2 goats, cross Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. None of the Aesir or Vanir knew Thor's purpose, but Loki followed him and Thor kept him close. As they rode in the brass chariot, Thor told Loki of his intent. He would go into Jotunheim, even into Utgard, the giant city, and test his strength against the giants. He feared nothing. Mjolnir, his hammer, was with him. Their road lay through Midgard, the world of men. One night, hungry and needing shelter, they saw a peasant's hut. They unyoked the goats and, looking like men, knocked and asked for food and shelter. The peasant and his wife could shelter them but had no food. They had eaten the little they had for supper. The peasant showed them the poor, bare inside, and said he would fish in the morning. "We can't wait till morning," Thor said. "I can provide a good meal." He struck the goats with his hammer and left them lifeless. He skinned them, set bones carefully on the skins, and hid them in a hole above the peasant's fireplace. "No one," he commanded, "must touch the bones I leave here." He brought in the meat, it was cooked, and they sat to eat. The peasant and his wife and their son fed well. The son was Thialfi, a growing lad long underfed. While others ate, Thialfi kept busy with chores. By the time he sat, little remained. When all slept, he rose, took a bone from the skins above the hearth, broke it, and gnawed the marrow. Loki, awake and pleased by mischief, did nothing to stop him. He returned the broken bone and slept. In the morning Thor took the skins out and struck each with his hammer. The goats sprang up alive. One limped badly. Thor found a broken bone. In terrible anger he turned on the peasant and his family. "A bone of my goat has been broken under your roof," he shouted. "For that I shall destroy your house and leave you dead under it." Thialfi wept and came forward. "I did not know what harm I did," he said. Thor raised his hammer to crush him, then lowered it. "You will have to do much service for me for having lamed my goat," he said. "Come with me." So Thialfi went off with Thor and Loki. Thor lifted the shafts of his brass chariot and dragged it into a lonely mountain hollow where neither men nor giants came. He left the goats to rest in a great empty forest until he should call them. Thor, Loki, and Thialfi crossed from Midgard into Jotunheim. Because of Mjolnir, Thor felt secure among giants. Loki trusted his cunning, Thialfi trusted Thor. They traveled long, and Thor and Loki trained the lad to be quick and strong. One day they crossed a wide moor. Night fell and a great wind rose. No shelter showed. In the dusk they saw a shape like a mountain and went toward it, hoping for a cave. Loki noticed a lower shape that looked like shelter. They walked around it and found a house oddly shaped. A long wide hall with no doorway and 5 narrow chambers off it. "It is odd but the best shelter," Loki said. "You and I, Thor, will take the 2 longest rooms, Thialfi one of the small ones." They lay down, but the mountain outside made a noise like moaning forests and falling cataracts. Each sleeping chamber shook. None slept that night. In the morning they left the 5-chambered house and saw that the mountain was not a mountain at all but a giant. He lay on the ground and then rolled over and sat up. Little men, he shouted, "have you passed by a glove of mine on your way?" He looked about, found his glove, the 5-room shelter, and put it on his hand. It was his glove. Thor gripped his hammer. Loki and Thialfi stood behind him. The giant seemed good-humored. "Where might ye be bound?" he asked. "To Utgard in Jotunheim," Thor answered boldly. "Oh, to that place," the giant said. "Come, I'll go with ye so far. Call me Skrymir." "Can you give us breakfast?" Thor asked crossly, not wanting to show fear. "I can give you breakfast, but I don't want to stop now. We'll eat when I'm hungry. Here is my wallet for your provisions." He gave Thor the wallet. Thor put it on his back and set Thialfi upon it. The giant strode on. Thor and his companions barely kept up. At midday Skrymir showed signs of halting beneath an enormous tree. "I'll sleep before I eat," he said, "but you can open my wallet and make your meal." He stretched out and snored, sounds like moaning forests and cataracts. Thor and company were too hungry to be cowed. Thor tried to untie the wallet's knots. They held. Loki tried, no luck. Thor tried to break them by strength, he could not. In fury he flung the wallet down. The snoring grew louder. Thor grasped Mjolnir and flung it at the giant's head. It struck. Skrymir only stirred. "Did a leaf fall on my head?" he muttered and turned over. Thor flung it again. Skrymir said, "Has an acorn fallen on my forehead?" At last Thor struck such a blow that it was the greatest he had ever dealt. Skrymir opened his eyes, complaining that a bird pecked at his forehead, and then rose, took his wallet, and gave them provisions. Thor refused, but Loki and Thialfi ate. After the meal Skrymir rose. "Time for us to go toward Utgard," he said. As they walked, Skrymir told Loki, "I always feel very small when I go into Utgard. I'm such a weak fellow and the folk there so big. But you and your friends will be welcomed. They will make little pets of you." Then he left them and they entered Utgard, the giant city. Giants moved in the streets. Loki noticed they were not as huge as Skrymir had claimed. Utgard was the giant's Asgard. Its buildings lacked the beauty of the gods' palaces, Gladsheim, Breidablik, Fensaler. Here rose huge, shapeless structures like mountains or icebergs. Thor and Loki with Thialfi went to the king's palace. Thor's hammer reassured them. They passed rows of giant guards and reached the king's seat. "We know you, Thor and Loki," said the giant king. "Thor has come to test his strength. Tomorrow we shall have a contest. Today our youths have sports. If your servant would try his swiftness, let him race." Thialfi was the best runner in Midgard and had been trained by Thor and Loki. He entered. The king matched him with a youth named Hugi. They started. Thialfi sped, but Hugi left him behind, circled the winning post, and returned before Thialfi reached the end. Thialfi, puzzled, asked to run again. This time Hugi seemed barely to leave the starting line. He was back almost at once. They returned to the palace for supper. The king told Thor and Loki that tomorrow's great contest would show Asa Thor's power. "Have you ever seen one enter an eating contest?" he asked. "Our champion Loki can eat more than anyone in Jotunheim." "I," said Loki, "can eat more than any two. I will match Loki." Plates of meat were set along the table. Loki and Loki started at opposite ends, clearing plates toward each other. Loki ate much, but Loki cleared plates and bones too. Where Loki had eaten, bones remained. Where Loki had eaten, nothing was left. "We are beaten," Thor told Loki. "Tomorrow you must show all your strength," Loki said, "or the giants will cease to dread us." "Be not afraid," Thor answered. "No one in Jotunheim will triumph over me." The next day they entered the great hall. The king and many friends were there. Thor marched in with Mjolnir held ready. "Our young men have been drinking from this horn," said the king. "They ask if you, Asa Thor, will drink a morning draught. But they think no one of the Aesir could empty it at one draught." "Give it me," said Thor. There is no horn you can hand me that I cannot empty at a draught. A great horn, brimmed and flowing, was brought to him. Handing Mjolnir to Loki and bidding him keep watch over the hammer, Thor raised the horn to his mouth. He drank and drank. He felt sure there was not a drop left when he set it down. "There," he gasped, "your giant horn is drained." The giants peered and laughed. "Drained, Asa Thor," said the giant king. "Look again. You have hardly drunk below the brim." Thor looked and saw the horn still half full. In a mighty rage he lifted it again. He drank and drank and drank. Convinced he had emptied it, he left the horn and crossed to the other side of the hall. "Thor thinks he has drained the horn," one giant said as he lifted it. "See what remains." Thor strode back and looked. The horn was still half filled. All the giants laughed. "Asa Thor," said the king, "we know not how you will fare in the next feat, but you are not able to drink against the giants." "I can lift up and set down any being in your hall," Thor answered. At that moment a great iron-colored cat bounded into the hall, her back arched and fur bristling. "Then lift the cat off the ground," said the king. Thor stepped forward, determined to fling the beast among the mocking giants. He put his hands beneath her, and up went his arms as high as they could reach. The cat's arched back rose toward the roof, but her feet never left the floor. He heaved with all his might and heard the giants' laughter all around him. He turned away, eyes flaming. "I do not want to lift cats," he snapped. "Bring me one to wrestle with, and I swear you shall see me overthrow him." "Here is one for you to wrestle, Asa Thor," said the king. Thor looked up and saw an old woman hobbling toward him, blear-eyed and toothless. "This is Ellie, my ancient nurse," the king said. "She will wrestle you." "Thor does not wrestle old women," he said. "I will set my hands on your tallest giants instead." "Ellie has come," the king replied. "Now it is she who will lay hands on you." The old crone advanced, eyes gleaming beneath gray fringes of hair. Thor stood ready, but when she laid hands upon his arms her feet began to trip his. He strove to cast her off. Her hands and feet were as strong as bands of iron. A true wrestling match began. Round and round the hall they grappled. Thor could not bend the old woman backward or sideways. Instead he grew weaker under her terrible grip. She forced him down and down until, to save himself from falling flat, he dropped to one knee and clutched her by the shoulders. She strove to press him to the ground but could not. At last she broke free, hobbled to the door and went out of the hall. Thor rose, took Mjolnir from Loki and without a word left the hall. He went along the way toward the gate of the giant city. He spoke no word to Loki nor to the lad Thialfi, who went with him for the 7 weeks of their journey through Jotunheim. Chapter 6. How Thor and Loki befooled Tuohem the giant. Loki told another tale about Thor and Tuohem, a stupid giant who yet had cunning streaks in him. Loki and Thor had been in this giant's house. Tuohem made a feast for them and Thor had been unwatchful. When they were far from Jotunheim, Thor missed Mjolnir, the hammer that was the defense of Asgard and the help of the gods. He could not remember how or where he had mislaid it. Loki's thoughts turned toward Tuohem. Thor, who had sworn never to let the hammer out of his sight, did not know what to do. Loki thought it would be worth trying to see if Teacher Ym knew anything about it. First Loki hurried to Asgard. He crossed the Rainbow Bridge and passed Heimdall without speaking. He told none of the dwellers in Asgard of Thor's loss until he reached Frigga's palace. To Frigga he said, "You must lend me your falcon dress until I fly to Durham's dwelling and find out if he knows where Mjolnir is." "If every feather were silver I would give it to you to go on such an errand," Frigga answered. So Loki put on the falcon dress and flew to Jotunheim. From a rock above Durham's dwelling he watched, in the plumage of a falcon, the giant who was upon a hillside fastening golden and silver collars upon his hounds. While Loki watched, he heard Durham boast, "I put collars of silver and gold on you now, my hounds, but soon we giants will have the gold of Asgard to deck our hounds and our steeds, yea, even the necklace of Freya to put upon you, the best of my hounds." For Mjolnir, the defense of Asgard, is in Teacherham's holding. Loki spoke down from above. "Yeah, we know that Mjolnir is in thy possession, Odhrim," said he, "but know thou that the eyes of the watchful gods are upon thee." "Ha, Loki, shape-changer," said Tuohem. "You are there. But all your watching will not help you to find Mjolnir. I have buried Thor's hammer 8 miles deep in the earth. Find it if you can. It lies below the caves of the dwarfs." "It is useless for us to search for Thor's hammer," Loki said. "It is useless for you to search for it," the giant sulked. "But what a recompense you would gain if you restored Thor's hammer to the dwellers in Asgard," Loki urged. "No, cunning Loki, I will never restore it, not for any recompense," Tuohem answered. Yet bethink thee, Loki pressed. Is there not an Asgard you would like to own? No treasure, no possession? Odin's ring? Frey's ship, Skidbladner? No, no, said Tyr. Only one thing could the dwellers in Asgard offer me that I would take in exchange for Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. And what would that be, Troim? Loki asked. She whom many giants have striven to gain, Freya for my wife, said Tyr. Loki watched him long. The giant would not alter his demand. I will tell the dwellers in Asgard of your demand, Loki said at last, and he flew away. By this time all in Asgard had heard of the loss of Mjolnir. Heimdall cried to Loki as he crossed the Rainbow Bridge, but Loki did not stop. He went straight to the hall where the gods sat in council and told the Aesir and the Vanir Tyrm's demand. None would agree to give Freya to Tyrwam. The gods were cast down. Without Mjolnir, their power to help men and to defend Asgard would be broken. They sat in gloom. Then cunning Loki spoke. I have thought of a trick that may win back the hammer. Let us pretend to send Freya to Jotunheim as a bride. But have one of the gods go in Freya's veil and dress. Which of the gods would bring himself to do such a shameful thing? They asked. Oh, he who lost the hammer, Thor, should be prepared to do as much to win it back, Loki replied. Thor. Let Thor win back the hammer by Loki's trick, cried the Aesir and Vanir. They left the plan to Loki to arrange. Loki found Thor and told him the only way to win back Mjolnir. Thor agreed to do whatever must be done. I am to take you to Jotunheim as a bride for Tyrm, Loki said with a laugh. Thou art to go in bridal dress and veil, in Freya's veil and bridal dress. What? I dress in woman's garb? Thor shouted. Yeah, Thor, and wear a veil over thy head and a garland of flowers upon it. I wear a garland of flowers? And rings upon thy fingers, and a bunch of housekeeper's keys in thy girdle. Cease thy mockery, Loki, Thor growled, or I shall shake thee. It is no mockery. Thou must do this to win Mjolnir back. Tyrwam will take no other recompense than Freya. I shall be with thee as thy bridesmaid. O sweet, sweet maiden Thor. Loki, said Thor, thou didst devise all this to mock me. I in a bridal dress. The dwellers in Asgard will never cease to laugh. Yeah, Loki said, but there will be no laughter unless thou bringest back the hammer. It is the only way, O Thor, Loki insisted. So Thor and Loki set out for Jotunheim. A messenger had gone before them to tell Tyrm that Freya was coming with her bridesmaid, that the wedding feast was to be prepared, and that Mjolnir was to be at hand. Tyrm and his giant mother made ready. Thor came veiled and crowned with a garland, a red embroidered robe about him, a girdle of housekeeper's keys at his side. Loki, veiled also, stood with him as bridesmaid. Tyrm's great hall was swept and garnished, tables were spread. Tyrm's mother vaunted that her son was getting one of the beauteous dwellers in Asgard, Freya. When they crossed the threshold, Tyrm went to welcome them and would have raised the veil. Loki put his hand on the giant's shoulder and whispered, Forbear. We dwellers in Asgard are reserved and bashful. Freya would be offended to be kissed before this company. I, said Tyrm's mother. Do not raise thy bride's veil, son. These dwellers in Asgard are more refined in their ways. She took Thor by the hand and led him to the table. The giants stared, but the veils hid the faces. Thor sat with Tyrwam on one side and Loki on the other. The feast began. Thor, heedless of maidenly decorum, ate salmon at once. Loki nudged and pressed his foot, but Thor paid no heed. After the salmon he ate a whole ox. These maids of Asgard, the giants whispered, they may be refined, as Tyrm's mother says, but their appetites are lusty enough. No wonder she eats, poor thing, Loki said to Tyrm. It has been 8 days since we left Asgard. Freya never ate on the way, so anxious was she to see Tyrm. Poor darling, cooed the giant. What she has eaten is little after all. Thor nodded toward the mead vat. Tyrm ordered servants to bring a measure for his bride. Servant after servant brought measures to Thor. While the giants watched and Loki nudged, he drank 3 barrels of mead. Oh, the giants told Tyrm's mother, we are not so sorry that we failed to win a bride from Asgard. At last a piece of the veil slipped, and Thor's eyes were seen for an instant. Oh, how comes it that Freya has such glaring eyes? Said Tyrm. Poor thing, Loki answered. No wonder her eyes are glaring. She has not slept for 8 nights, so anxious was she to come to you. But now join hands with your bride. First, put into her hands the hammer Mjolnir, that she may know the great recompense the giants have given for her coming. Tyrm rose and brought Mjolnir into the feasting hall. Thor could hardly restrain himself. Loki kept him still. Troim put the hammer's handle into the hands of the bride. Thor's hands closed on his hammer. Instantly he sprang up. The veil fell off. His countenance and blazing eyes were seen by all. He struck one blow upon the wall, down it crashed. Thor strode out of the ruin with Mjolnir, Loki beside him, while within the giants bellowed as the roof and walls fell upon them. Thus Mjolnir, the defense of Asgard, was lost and won back. Chapter 7, Aegir's Feast, How Thor Triumphed. Between midday and evening the Aesir and the Vanir gathered in old Aegir's hall and listened while Loki mocked Thor with tales. Night fell and yet no banquet was brought. They called Aegir's underservants, Fimafinger and Elder, and begged supper. It was scant, but the guests went to bed saying, "Great must be the preparations that old Aegir is making to feast us tomorrow." The next day wore on and still no preparations showed. At midday Frey rose and went to seek Aegir, the giant king of the sea. He found Aegir sitting with bowed head in his inner hall. "Ho Aegir," said Frey, "what of the banquet you have offered to the dwellers in Asgard?" Aegir mumbled and pulled at his beard. At last he looked up and told his guest the truth. The mead for the feast was not yet brewed. Worse, he lacked a kettle large enough to brew mead for such a company. The Aesir and Vanir were sorely disappointed. Who else outside Asgard would give them a feast? Aegir was their only friendly giant. A giant youth there spoke up. His kinsman Hrymer had a mead kettle a mile wide. If they could fetch Hrymer's kettle, they could brew a feast fit for all. "One of us can go for that kettle," Frey said. "Hrymer dwells beyond the deepest forest and behind the highest mountain," the giant youth warned, "and Hrymer himself is rough and churlish." "I will go to Hrymer's dwelling," said Thor, rising. "I will get the mile-wide kettle from him by force or cunning." Thor buckled on his belt that doubled his strength, drew on the iron gloves that made him grasp Mjolnir, took his hammer and called the giant youth his guide. The Aesir and Vanir applauded, but Loki threw one last jibe. "Do not let the hammer out of your hands this time, bride of Doom," he shouted. Thor and the giant youth went through the deepest forest and over the highest mountain until at last they came to Hrymer's house. On a hillock before the dwelling squatted a dreadful warden, a giant crone with many heads growing from her shoulders. As they drew near, all her heads screamed and yelped. Thor would have hurled Mjolnir at her, but a giant woman came to the door, making a sign of peace. The youthful guide greeted her as his mother. "Son, come within," she said. "Bring your fellow farer with you." The crone kept up her screaming, but Thor passed in. The giant woman grew fearful when she saw one of the dwellers in Asgard. "Hrymer will be in a rage to find an Aesir under his roof," she warned. "It is not likely he will succeed," Thor answered, Mjolnir in hand. "Hide for a little while," she pleaded. "He comes back from the chase in a stormy temper. After he has eaten he is easier to deal with. Hide until he has finished supper." Thor agreed. He and the giant youth hid behind a pillar in the hall. They had barely done so when Hrymer came in from the chase dragging a wild bull he had taken. He tied the bull to the doorpost and then, seeing the pillar, fixed his gaze upon it. The pillar split from top to bottom. It broke across, the crossbeam fell, kettles and cauldrons rattled down with a terrible noise. Then Thor stepped from behind the ruined pillar. "It is I who am here, friend Hrymer," he said, his hand on his hammer. Hrymer, who knew Thor and the dread force of his hammer, drew back. "Now that you are in my house, Asa Thor, I will not quarrel with you. Make supper ready for Asa Thor, your son, and myself," he told the giant woman. A plentiful supper was spread. Hrymer and Thor and the giant youth sat to 3 whole roast oxen. Thor ate the whole of 1 ox. Hrymer, who had eaten nearly 2, grumbled at Thor's appetite. "You'll clear my fields, Asa Thor, if you stay long with me," he warned. "Do not grumble, Hrymer," Thor said. "Tomorrow I'll go fishing and bring you back the weight of what I ate." "Then I'll go fishing with you," Hrymer replied. "And don't be frightened if I take you out on a rough sea." Hrymer rose first the next morning, pole and ropes in hand. "Time to start earning your meal, Asa Thor," he said. When they were both in the courtyard, Hrymer told Thor to provide a bait large enough. They would fish where monsters lay, not little fish. Thor took up the horns of the bull Hrymer had captured. "Will this bait be big enough?" Thor asked, laying his hands on the bull's mighty horns. "Yes, if you are big enough to handle it," Hrymer sneered. Thor struck the bull full in the middle of the forehead. It fell dead. Thor twisted the head off and said, "I have my bait and I am ready to go with you, Hrymer." Hrymer, hiding his rage, walked down to the boat without speaking. "You may row for the first few strokes," he said once they were afloat, "but when we come to the rough water I'll take the oars." Thor made a few strokes that carried the boat into the middle of the ocean. Hrymer let out his line and soon hooked something huge. The boat rocked until Thor steadied it. Hrymer hauled up the largest whale in those seas. "Good fishing," Thor said as he set his own bait. "I thought to show you something bigger than salmon fishing," Thor replied. He cast the great bull's head as bait. Down it sank through the waters where the whales swam and deeper still toward the haunts of the world-encircling serpent. The serpent reared as the bait passed through its coils. It gulped the head and drew the hook into its gullet. Terribly surprised, it lashed the ocean into a fury. The boat lurched, ships on the sea were hurled and wrecked. Thor braced himself, spread his legs till they touched the bottom of the ocean, and stood on the bed as he hauled on the line. The serpent fought and lashed, loosening coil after coil from around the world. At last its terrible head broke the surface and reared above the waters, towering over the boat. Thor dropped the line and seized Mjolnir, ready to strike. Hrymer, seething with envy and unwilling that Thor should surpass him, cut the line. The serpent's head sank back into the sea. Thor hurled his hammer after it. The hammer followed the sinking head down fathom after fathom and struck the monster. The blow, though blunted by water, was fierce. A bellow of pain rose from the depths that fright all Jotunheim. "This will be something to tell the Aesir," Thor said. "Something to make them forget Loki's mockeries." Hrymer rode back in silence, dragging the whale. He was too angry to speak. At supper Thor boasted of his triumph over the serpent. Hrymer at last taunted him. "Do you think yourself powerful, Asa Thor? Can you break the cup before you?" Thor took up the cup and hurled it against a stone pillar. The cup fell without a crack. The pillar shattered. Hrymer laughed. "So feeble are the folk of Asgard," he sneered. Thor took the cup again and flung it harder. The cup lay intact. Then the giant woman, mother to the youth, sang softly as she plied her wheel. Not at the pillar of the stead, but at Hrymer's massy head. "When you next the goblet throw, let his head receive the blow." Thor took the cup and aimed true. It struck Hrymer full on the forehead and fell in pieces. Hrymer's head remained unharmed. "So you can break a cup," Hrymer cried, "but can you lift my mile-wide kettle?" "Show me where it is and I shall try," Thor answered. Hrymer lifted a floorboard and showed the mile-wide kettle down in the cellar. Thor stooped, took the kettle by the brim, and lifted slowly as if with a mighty effort. Hrymer mocked, "You can lift, but can you carry it?" "I will try," Thor said. He set the kettle on his head, strode to the door and ran. He was across the mountain before he looked back. The giant crone with many heads gave chase, yelping and screaming. Uphill and down dale Thor raced with the mile-wide kettle upon his head. At last the crone leaped to jump a lake, fell in, and Thor was free. Thor returned to the Aesir and Vanir in triumph, the mile-wide kettle upon his head. Those who had laughed at Loki's mockeries rose and cheered. The mead was brewed, the feast prepared, and the greatest banquet the kings of the giants ever gave to the dwellers in Asgard was eaten in gladness. A strange and silent figure sat at the banquet, a giant no one knew. When the feast was over, Odin spoke to him. "O Skirmr, giant king of Utgard, rise and tell Thor of all you practiced upon him when he and Loki came to your city." The stranger stood. Thor and Loki recognized him. It was Skirmr, the giant king whose halls had held their contests. Skirmr told them plainly how he had deceived them. He admitted he had met them on the moor and given his name as Skirmr to bar their entrance. The wallet he had given them to carry provisions was tied with magic knots. The mountain placed between them and himself took the blows Thor thought struck Skirmr. The contests were not what Thor and Loki supposed. He revealed each trick. Thialfi's race had been against thought itself. Loki's contest had been with devouring fire. The drinking horn's end had reached to the sea so that when Thor drank the sea level fell. The cat Thor strove to lift was Nidhogg, the dragon that gnaws at Yggdrasil's roots. The hag Ellie was old age itself. "Truly," Skirmr said, "we were terrified when we saw what you could do." Then he left the hall. Once more the Aesir and the Vanir rose and cheered Thor, Thor, the strongest of all who guard Asgard. Chapter 8, The Dwarf's Hoard and the Curse that it brought. Now old Agir's feast was over, and all the Aesir and the Vanir made ready for their return to Asgard. Two only went another way, Odin, the eldest of the gods, and Loki the mischievous. Odin and Loki laid aside all the tokens of divine power and strength. They were going into the world of men, and they would be as men merely. Together they wandered through Midgard, mingling with kings and farmers, outlaws and true men, warriors and householders, thralls and counselors, courteous men and ill-mannered men. One day they came to the bank of a mighty river and rested, listening to the beat of iron upon iron in a place nearby. Presently, on a rock in the middle of the river, they saw an otter come. The otter went into the water and came back with a catch of salmon. He devoured it there. Then Odin saw Loki do a senseless and evil thing. Taking up a great stone, he flung it at the otter. The stone struck the beast on the skull and knocked him dead. "Loki, Loki, why hast thou done a thing so senseless and so evil?" Odin said. Loki only laughed. He waded across the water and came back with the river creature. "Why didst thou take the life of the beast?" Odin asked. "The mischief in me made me do it," said Loki. He drew out his knife and, ripping the otter open, began to flay him. When the skin was off the beast, he folded it and stuck it into his belt. Then Odin and he left the river. They came to a house with 2 smithies beside it, and from the smithies came the sound of iron beating upon iron. They went within and asked that they might eat and rest. An old man who was cooking fish over a fire pointed to a bench. "Rest there," said he, "and when the fish is cooked I will give you something good to eat. My son is a fine fisher and he brings me the best." Odin and Loki sat on the bench while the old man cooked. "My name is Hreidmar," he said. "I have 2 sons who work in the smithies without. I have a 3rd son also. It is he who does the fishing for us. And who may ye be, O wayfaring men?" Loki and Odin gave names to Hreidmar that were not the names by which they were known in Asgard or on Midgard. Hreidmar served fish to them and they ate. "And what adventures have ye met upon your travels?" he asked. "Few folk come this way to tell me of happenings." "I killed an otter with a cast of a stone," Loki said with a laugh. "You killed an otter?" Hreidmar cried. "Where did you kill one?" "Where I killed him is of no import to you, old man," said Loki. "His skin is a good one, however. I have it on my belt." Hreidmar snatched the skin from Loki's belt. As soon as he saw it he shrieked, "Fafnir, Regan, my sons, come here and bring the thralls of your smithies. Come, come, come." "Why dost thou make such an outcry, old man?" said Odin. "Ye have slain my son Otter," shrieked Hreidmar. "This in my hands is the skin of my son." As Hreidmar spoke, 2 young men bearing the 4 hammers of the smithies came in, followed by the thralls. "Strike these men dead with your 4 hammers, O Fafnir, O Regan," their father cried. "Otter, who used to stay in the river and whom I changed by enchantment into a river beast that he might fish for me, has been slain by these men." "Peace," said Odin. "We have slain thy son, it would seem, but it was unwittingly that we did the deed. We will give a recompense for the death of thy son." "What recompense will ye give?" said Hreidmar, his small, sharp eyes fixed on Odin. Then did Odin, the eldest of the gods, speak a word unworthy of his wisdom. He might have promised some draught of Mimir's well, some wise making, but instead he thought of gold. "Set a price on the life of thy son and we will pay that price in gold," he said. "Maybe ye are great kings traveling through the world?" Hreidmar answered. "If ye are, ye will have to find gold that will cover every hair upon the skin of him whom ye have killed." Odin, his mind fixed on treasure, thought of a certain hoard guarded by a dwarf. No other wealth in the 9 worlds would be enough to satisfy Hreidmar's demand. He thought on how it might be taken, and shamefaced he said to Loki, "Dost thou know of Andvari's hoard?" "I know of it," said Loki sharply, "and I know where it is hidden. Wilt thou give me leave to fetch Andvari's hoard?" Odin spoke to Hreidmar. "I will stay with thee as a hostage," he said, "if thou wilt let this one go to fetch a treasure that will cover the otter's skin hair by hair." "I will let this be done," said old Hreidmar. "Go now," he bade Loki. Loki left the house and set out. Andvari was a dwarf who, in the early days, had gained for himself the greatest treasure in the 9 worlds. To guard it unceasingly he changed himself into a fish, a pike, and swam in the pool before the cave where the hoard was hidden. All in Asgard knew of the dwarf and of the hoard. There was a thought among the gods that the hoard should not be meddled with, that some evil was joined to it. But Odin had given the word that it was to be taken. Loki set out for Andvari's cave rejoicing. He came to the pool and watched for a glimpse of the pike. Soon he saw the pike swimming cautiously before the cave. He would have to catch it and hold it till the treasure was given for ransom. The pike, sensing danger, darted away. Not with hands nor hook and line could Loki catch such a fish. Only a net woven by magic could hold him. Loki thought where he might get such a net. Ran, the wife of old Aegir, the giant king of the sea, had a net woven by magic. In it she took all that was wrecked on the sea. Loki sought Ran. He found her down by the rocks, standing in the surf, drawing out with her net every piece of treasure that the waves had brought, corals and amber, bits of gold and silver. Still she plied her net greedily. "Thou knowst me, Aegir's wife," Loki said. "I know thee, Loki," Ran replied. "Lend me thy net," Loki asked. "That I will not do," said Ran. Lend me thy net that I may catch Andvari the dwarf who boasts that he has a greater treasure than ever thou wilt take out of the sea, Loki urged. Rand ceased her work and looked at him steadily. She hated the dwarfs, they boasted of treasures greater than the seas. She especially hated Andvari. There is nothing more to gather here, she said, and if thou wilt swear to bring me back my net by tomorrow I shall lend it to thee. I swear by the sparks of Muspelheim that I will bring thy net back to thee by tomorrow, O Queen of Aegir, Loki cried. Rand put the magic net into his hands. He went back to the pool. Dark was the water where Andvari floated as a pike. Dark it was, but to him it was all golden with the light of his hoard. For the sake of this hoard he had given up the companionship of his kind. For its keeping he had taken on the dumbness and deafness of a fish. As he swam before the cave he became aware of a shadow above. He slipped toward the bank. As he turned he saw a net sweeping toward him. He sank. But the magic net had spread and he fell into its meshes. Suddenly he was out of the water, gasping on the bank. He would have died had he not undone his transformation. Soon he was a dwarf again. Andvari, thou art caught. It is one of the Aesir who has taken thee, his captor said. Loki, he gasped. Thou art caught and thou shalt be held, Loki said. It is the will of the Aesir that thou give up thy hoard to me. My hoard, the dwarf shouted. Never will I give up my hoard. I hold thee till thou givest it to me, said Loki. Unjust, unjust, cried Andvari. It is only thou, Loki, who art unjust. I will go to the throne of Odin and have him punish thee for striving to rob me of my treasure. Odin hath sent me to fetch thy hoard to him, Loki said. Can it be that all the Aesir are unjust? Andvari raged. Ah yes. In the beginning they cheated the giant who built the wall round their city. The Aesir are unjust. Loki had Andvari in his power. After much rage and defiance the dwarf, trembling and crying, took Loki into his cavern. Turning a rock aside, he showed him the mass of gold and gems that was his hoard. At once Loki began to gather into the magic net lumps and ingots and circlets of gold, with rubies and sapphires and emeralds. Andvari snatched at something on the heap but made no sound. At last all was drawn into the net and Loki stood ready to bear the hoard away. There is one thing more to be given, said Loki, the ring that thou, Andvari, snatched from the heap. I snatched nothing, the dwarf protested. He shook with anger. His teeth gnashed and froth came on his lips. I snatched nothing from the heap. But Loki pulled up his arm and a ring fell to the ground, the ring that Andvari had hidden beneath his armpit. It was the most precious thing in all the hoard. Had it remained with him, Andvari would have thought his treasure whole, for this ring could make gold. It was of refined gold and engraved with a rune of power. Loki took this ring and put it on his finger. Then the dwarf screamed and, turning his thumbs toward him, uttered a curse. The ring with the rune of power upon it, may it weigh down thy fortune, and load thee with evil, thou Loki and all, who lust to possess the ring I have cherished. As Andvari spoke, Loki saw a figure rise in the cave and move toward him. He knew her, Gulvig, a giant woman who once had been in Asgard. Far back, when the gods had come to their holy hill and before Asgard was built, 3 women of the giants had come among the Aesir. After they dwelt with the gods, the lives of the Aesir altered. They began to value and hoard gold. They thought of war. Odin hurled his spear among messengers from the Vanir, and war came into the world. The 3 were driven from Asgard. Peace was made with the Vanir. The apples of lasting youth were grown again. But never were the Aesir as happy as before the 3 came. Gulvig was one of the 3 who had blighted the gods' early happiness. And behold, she stood in the cave where Andvari hoarded his treasure, smiling as she advanced toward Loki. So, Loki, she said, thou sayest me again? And Odin, who sent thee to this cave, shall see me again. Lo, Loki. I go to Odin to be thy messenger and to tell him that thou comest with Andvari's hoard. With that smile she left the cave with light steps. Loki drew the ends of the magic net together, gathered the treasure in its meshes and went out. Odin, the eldest of the gods, stood leaning on his spear, looking at the otter's skin spread before him. One came into the dwelling swiftly. Odin saw that she who came so quick and glad was Gulvig. Odin raised his spear to cast it at her. Lay thy spear down, Odin, she said. I dwelt long in the dwarf's cave. Thy word hath unloosed me, and the curse set over Andvari's ring hath sent me here. Lay thy spear down and look on me, O eldest of the gods. Thou didst cast me out of Asgard, but thy word hath brought me back. And if ye too, Odin and Loki, have bought yourselves free with gold and may enter Asgard, surely I, Gulvig, am free to enter also. Odin lowered his spear and sighed. "Surely it is so, Gulvig," he said. "I may not forbid thee to enter Asgard. Would I had thought of giving the man-facers mead or Mimir's well rather than this gold as recompense." As they spoke, Loki returned to Hreidmar's dwelling and laid the magic net on the floor. Old Hreidmar, with his sharp eyes and huge Fafnir and lean, hungry-looking Regan came in to gaze on the gold and gems shining through the meshes. They jostled to see, and Hreidmar cried, "No one may be here but these two kings and I while we measure out the gold and gems and see whether the recompense is sufficient. Go without, sons of mine." Fafnir and Regan were forced to leave the dwelling. They went out slowly and Gulvig went with them, whispering to both. With shaking hands old Hreidmar spread out the otter skin. He drew out the ears and the tail and the paws so that every single hair could be shown. Long he crawled on his knees, his sharp eyes searching over every line of the skin. And still on his knees he said, "Begin now, O kings, and cover with a gem or a piece of gold every hair on the skin that was my son." Odin stood leaning on his spear, watching the gold and gems being paid out. Loki took the gold, the ingots and lumps and circlets. He took the gems, the rubies, the emeralds, the sapphires, and began to place them over each hair. Soon the middle of the skin was all covered. Then he set gems and gold upon the paws and the tail. In a little while the otter skin glittered so that one might think it could light up the world. Still Loki hunted for some empty place where a gem or a piece of gold might be put. At last he rose. Every gem and every piece of gold had been drawn from the net. Every hair on the otter's skin had been covered. Old Hreidmar, still on his hands and knees, peered and peered over the hide, searching for a hair that might have been missed. At length he lifted himself on his knees. His mouth hung open, and for a moment he could not speak. He touched Odin at the knee, and when Odin stooped he showed him a single hair upon the lip that remained uncovered. "What meanest thou?" Loki cried, turning on the crouching man. "Your ransom is not paid yet. Look, here is still a hair uncovered." "You may not go until every hair is covered with gold or a gem," Hreidmar answered. "Peace, old man," Loki said roughly. "All the dwarf's hoard has been given me." "Ye may not go until every hair has been covered," Hreidmar repeated. "There is no more gold or gems," Loki returned. "Then ye may not go," Hreidmar cried, springing to his feet. It was true. Odin and Loki could not leave that house until the recompense they had agreed upon was paid in full. Where now would the Aesir find more gold? Odin's eye fell on the gleam upon Loki's finger, the ring he had taken from Andvari. "Thy fingering," Odin said. "Put thy fingering over the hair on the otter's skin." Loki drew off the ring, the gold with the rune upon it, and laid it upon the lip hair. Hreidmar clapped his hands and screamed aloud. Huge Fafnir and lean, hungry Regan entered, Gulvig close behind them. They clustered about the son's skin, glittering with gold and gems. But they looked more at one another than at the treasure, and deadly were the glances Fafnir and Regan cast upon their father, and upon each other. Over Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, past all the Aesir and the Vanir who had been at old Agir's feast, Fry and Freya, Frigga, Idun and Sif, Tyr with his sword and Thor in his chariot drawn by the goats. Loki came after them, and behind all came Odin, the father of the gods. He walked slowly, his head bowed, for he knew an unwelcome presence followed. The returning Gulvig, once cast out of Asgard, whose coming the gods could not forbid. Part 3, The Witch's Heart. Chapter 1, Foreboding in Asgard. What followed brought shame upon the gods, and mortals scarcely liked to speak of it. Gulvig the witch entered Asgard. Heimdall could not forbid her, and took a seat among the Aesir and the Vanir. She walked through the halls with a smile upon her face. Where she walked and where she smiled, care and dire foreboding came. Those who felt that creeping dread most were Bragi the poet and his wife, the fair and simple Iduna, keeper of the apples that held back age for the dwellers in Asgard. Bragi fell silent, his never-ending tale stopped. One day, overcome by the fear spreading through the worlds, Iduna slipped down Yggdrasil, the world tree, and no one remained to pluck the apples that kept the gods young. Then terror settled over Asgard. Strength and beauty began to fade. Thor found it hard to swing Mjolnir, his great hammer. The pale sheen beneath Freya's necklace dimmed. And still Gulvig walked the halls smiling, though all hated her for it. It was Odin and Fry who went in search of Iduna. She would have been returned at once if Fry had kept the magic sword he had bartered away for Gerda. Instead, in his quest he had to strive with one who guarded the lake where Iduna hid. Beli was that guardian. Fry overcame him at last with a weapon made from stag's antlers. The loss of his sword was a sorrow that came to wait upon Fry later. When the riders of Muspel rode against Asgard, the Vanir might have prevailed had Fry kept his blade. They found Iduna and brought her back, yet care and foreboding still crept through Asgard. The witch's influence had altered the thoughts of the gods. At length Odin judged Gullveig and pronounced her death. He decreed that only Gungnir, his spear, might slay one not of mortal race. Odin hurled Gungnir. The spear pierced Gullveig, but she stood smiling. A second time Gungnir struck. She was livid as one dead, yet she did not fall. A third time the spear flew. Pierced 3 times, the witch gave a scream that shook all Asgard and then fell dead to the earth. "I have slain in these halls where slaying is forbidden," Odin said. "Take the corpse of Gullveig and burn it upon the ramparts, so no trace of the witch who troubled us remain in Asgard." They carried Gullveig out and laid her upon a pyre on the ramparts. Fires were lit beneath the pile, and they called upon Hresvelgr to fan the flames. Hresvelgr is the giant, who on heaven's edge sits, in the guise of an eagle, and the winds, it is said, rush down on the earth, from his outspreading pinions. Far away Loki had been, for he now often left Asgard to look upon the wondrous treasure that had come from Andvari. It was Gullveig who had filled his thoughts with images of that hoard. When Loki returned and heard what had been done, a fury flamed up within him. He was one of those whose mind the witch had bent. Her whispers had turned him to hate the gods. Loki went to the place of burning. Gullveig's body lay reduced to ashes, but her heart had not burned. In his rage Loki took the heart from the pyre and ate it. Black and dreadful was that day in Asgard, the day Loki ate the heart that the flames would not consume. Chapter 2, Loki the Betrayer. He stole Frigga's dress of falcon feathers and, wearing it, flew from Asgard as a falcon. Jotunheim was his destination. The hawk's anger and fierceness lay in Loki as he crossed the giant's realm. The mountains and chasms of that dread land kindled him like wildfire. He saw whirlpools and smoking peaks and took a savage joy in them. Higher and higher he rose, and far to the south he made out the flaming realm of Muspelheim. Higher still, and through his falcon eyes he spied the gleam of Surtur's sword. All that fire and all that gloom would one day be hurled at Asgard and Midgard. Now, however, Loki felt no dread at the thought of ruin. He hovered about a dwelling in Jotunheim because he had seen 2 of the household there, women whose ugliness and malice pleased him, for his heart was turned against the Aesir and the Vanir. He paused at the open door and peered in. Geirröd, the fiercest of the giants, sat within. Beside him, squatting on the floor, were his 2 evil daughters, Gialp and Grape. They were huge and coarse, black and rugged, with horses' teeth and hair like manes. Gialp was the fouler of the pair, a nose a yard long, eyes set crookedly in her face. They scratched and spoke of Asgard and of those who dwelt there, of their hatred and of Thor in particular. "I would bind Thor in chains," Geirröd growled, "and beat him to death with my iron club. I would grind his bones to powder," said Grape. "I would tear the flesh from his bones," said Gialp. "Father, can you not catch this Thor and bring him to us alive? Not so long as he has his hammer Mjolnir, and the gloves with which he grasps it, and the belt that doubles his strength." "Oh, if we could catch him without his hammer, his belt, and his gloves," the 2 daughters cried together. At that very moment the falcon hovered before the doorway. Hungry for prey and mischief, the 3 set their hearts on seizing the bird. They did not stir from their places but called the child Glap, who swung upon the roof tree and bade him catch it. Hidden among glossy leaves, Glap climbed the ivy about the door. The falcon swooped near. Glap leapt and seized it by the wings, tumbling down through the ivy and shrieking as the bird beat, clawed, tore at him with beak and talon. Geirröd and his daughters rushed out and held the falcon. The giant peered into his captive's eyes and knew this was no mere bird. The look showed him kin to Alfheim or Asgard. He shut Loki in a box and left him to waste with hunger. When they next opened the box, Loki spoke. He promised to do any hurt that would please them if they would set him free. "Will you bring Thor to us?" Grape asked. "Will you bring him without his hammer, without the gloves with which he grips it, and without his belt?" Gialp demanded. "I will," Loki swore. "Thor is easily deceived. I can bring him to you without his hammer, his gloves, or his belt." "Swear then by the gloom of Jotunheim," said Geirröd, "and we will let thee go." Loki swore, "Yea, and by the fires of Muspelheim," he added. They unbound him and he flew back to Asgard. He restored Frigga's feathered dress and told how he had been shut in Geirröd's house. Those who judged him blamed him for the theft, but thought his punishment sufficient. Loki resumed his talk among the dwellers in Asgard, his hatred, fanned by Gullveig's influence and by the heart he had eaten, simmering beneath his words. He spoke to Thor of the wonders he had seen in Jotunheim. Thor laughed at the memory of past disguises, how he once went as a bride to Thrym, and Loki, with cunning, persuaded him to another journey. "And I must tell thee of what I saw in Geirrid's house," Loki said. "I saw hair, Sif's hair." "The hair of Sif, my wife?" Thor asked, startled. "Yes," Loki said. "The hair I once cut from Sif's head. Geirrid found it when I cast it away. They light their hall by Sif's hair. They need no torches where that hair hangs." "I would like to see it," said Thor. "Then visit Geirrid," Loki urged. "But if you go, you must go without Mjolnir, without thy gloves, and without thy belt." "Where shall I leave them?" Thor asked. "Leave them in Valasjaf, Odin's own hall," Loki replied. "Leave them there and come to Geirrid's house. Sure, you will be well treated." Thor left his hammer, his gloves, and his belt in Valasjaf and set out with Loki toward Jotunheim. Near the end of their road they came upon a broad river and met a young giant on the bank. Together the three began to ford it. Suddenly the waters rose. The current would have swept Loki and the young giant away but for Thor, who gripped them both. The flood climbed higher and the torrent grew rougher. Thor planted his feet on the riverbed and held firm. He caught a mountain ash at the bank and, holding fast, drew Loki and the young giant to safety. Looking upriver, Thor saw the cause, a giantess pouring a flood into the stream. He tore a rock from the bank and hurled it. It struck her and flung her into the river. She wallowed and fled yelping. That giantess was Gialp, Geirrid's evil daughter. The young giant Thor had aided would not be parted from his savior. He begged Thor to go visit his mother Jur, a wise old giantess living in a cave. Loki refused to go and was angry at Thor's kindness. Thor, seeing the youth was friendly, consented. "Go then, but hasten afterward to Geirrid's house. I will wait for you there," Loki said. He watched Thor climb the hillside to Jur's cave until Thor had come down again and was on his way to Geirrid's dwelling. He watched Thor enter the house where he thought death awaited him. Then, mad with what he had set in motion, Loki ran along the ground with his head bent, like a bird. Jura sat at her grinding corn between two stones. When her son led Thor and she cried, "Who is this?" "One of the Aesir." "What giant would you harm now, Asa Thor?" "I mean no harm, old Jurr," Thor answered. "Look upon me, see that I have not Mjolnir, my hammer, nor my belt, nor my iron gloves." "Where in Jotunheim go you?" "To the house of Geirrid, a friendly giant." "Geirrid, a friend? You are mad. Is he friend to your maker?" "Even my son, this one who saved you from the flood, speaks of him." "Tell him of Geirrid, old mother," the youth urged. "Do not go, Asa Thor. Do not go to his house. My word is given. I would be a craven to break it because an old crone at her corn bids me beware. I will give thee help, Asa Thor. Lucky for thee I am mistress of magical things. Take this staff, it is a staff of power and will serve thee in place of Mjolnir. I take it thankfully, old dame, though worm-eaten it be. Take also these mittens, they will serve instead of thy iron gloves. I take them thankfully, though they be worn. And take this length of cord, it shall serve thee for thy belt of prowess. I will take it, though a ragged string. 'Tis well for thee, Asa Thor, that I am mistress of magic." Thor bound the worn string about his waist and felt the surge of strength as if his own belt were fastened. He drew on the mittens and took the staff. The old woman's gifts were truly magical. He left Jura's cave and went toward Geirrid's house. Loki was not there. For the first time doubt crept upon Thor. Perhaps Jura was right and a trap was set. The hall was empty. He passed into a great stone chamber and found no one there either, but in the center stood a stone seat. Thor sat. No sooner had he done so than the seat shot upward. Thor would have been crushed against the roof had he not held his staff aloft. The staff's power and the string's strength thrust the chair downward. The stone seat crashed onto the floor. From beneath there came horrible screams. Thor lifted the seat and found two broken, ugly bodies, Gialp and Grape, crushed beneath it, where they had hidden to watch his death. The stone meant for him had slain them instead. Thor strode from that chamber with his teeth clenched. A great fire burned in the hall, and beside it stood Geirrid, long-armed and cruel. He held the tongs in the flame. As Thor drew near, the giant flung a blazing wedge of iron from them. The iron whistled for Thor's brow. Thor, with Jur's mittens about his hands, caught the wedge and hurled it back. It struck Geirrid on the brow and went blazing through him. Geirrid fell into the fire. The burning iron made a livelier blaze about him. When Thor later came to Jur's cave to return the string, mittens, and staff she had lent him, he saw Geirrid's dwelling all aflame, as if the fires of Muspelheim had been kindled round it. Chapter 3, Loki against the Sur. The Aesir were guests of the Vanir at Frey's palace. The dwellers in Asgard met and feasted in friendship. Odin and Tyr were there, Vidar and Vale, Njord, Frey, Heimdall and Bragi. The Aesir and the Vanna sat among them. Frigga, Freya, Iduna, Gerda, Skadi, Sif and Nanna. Thor and Loki were not at the table, they had gone out together. In Frey's hall the vessels shone like gold. They gave light to the table and moved of their own accord to serve the feast. All seemed peaceable and friendly, until Loki entered. Frey smiled and showed Loki a bench beside Bragi and next to Freya. Loki would not sit. He shouted, "Not beside Bragi will I sit, not beside Bragi, the most craven of all the dwellers in Asgard." Bragi sprang up at the insult, but his wife, the mild Iduna, quieted him. Freya turned to Loki and rebuked him for speaking such words at a feast. "Freya," Loki answered, "why were you not so mild when Odin was with you? Would it not have been better to be wifely with your husband instead of breaking faith for a necklace that you craved from the giant women?" Amazement fell at the bitterness in Loki's tone and look. Tyr and Njord rose. Then Odin's voice made them still. Only the All-Father's words could quiet the hall. "Take the place beside Vidar, my silent son, O Loki," Odin said, "and let thy tongue which drips bitterness be silent. All the Aesir and the Vanir listen to thy words, O Odin, as if thou wert always wise and just," Loki replied. "But must we forget that thou didst bring war when thou didst fling thy spear at the Vanir envoys? Didst thou not let me work craftily on the builder of Asgard's wall for a price? And when a ransom had to be made, didst thou not think of gold and bring the witch Gulvig out of the cave with the dwarf's treasure? Thou art not always wise nor always just, O Odin. We here need not heed thee as if thou wert." Skadi, Njord's wife, answered with the fierceness of her giant blood. "Why should we not rise and drive this chattering crow from the hall?" she cried. "Skadi," Loki said, "remember the ransom for thy father's death has not been paid. Thou wert glad to take a husband instead. Remember who killed thy giant father. It was I, Loki. And I have paid thee no ransom, though thou dwellest now among us in Asgard." Loki then fixed his eyes on Frey, and all knew bitter words would follow. Tyr rose quickly. "Not against Frey mayst thou speak, O Loki. Frey is generous. He spares the vanquished and frees the captive." "Cease," Loki replied. "Thou mayst not always have a hand to hold that sword of thine. Remember this saying of mine in days to come. Frey," Loki went on, "because thou art giver of the feast they think I will not speak true against thee. I am not to be bribed by a feast. Didst thou not send Skirnir to Gymir's dwelling to beguile Gymir's flighty daughter? Didst thou not bribe him to frighten her into a marriage with thee, thou who, men say, wert the slayer of her brother? Yea, Frey. Thou didst part with a charge, the magic sword that should have been kept for battle. Thou hadst cause to grieve when thou met Beli by the lake." At this the Vanir rose, faces threatening Loki. "Sit still, ye Vanir," Loki railed. "If the Aesir are to bear Jotunheim's and Muspelheim's war upon Asgard, it was your part to stand with them on Vigurd's plain. But already ye have lost the battle for Asgard, for Frey bartered away the weapon placed in his hand for Gerda the giantess. Surtur shall triumph over you because of Frey's bewitchment." Horror spread at the thought that Loki would speak of Surtur's triumph. All would have seized him, but Odin's voice rang out again. At the entrance stood Thor, hammer upon his shoulder, iron gloves on his hands, the belt of prowess about him. His eyes blazing on Loki. "Ha, Loki, betrayer," Thor shouted. "Thou didst seek to leave me dead in Geirrid's house. Now thou shalt meet death by the stroke of this hammer." His hands rose to hurl Mjolnir. Odin's words stayed him. "Not in this hall may slaying be done, son Thor. Keep thy hands upon thy hammer." Shrinking from Thor's wrath, Loki left the hall. He passed beyond Asgard's walls, crossed Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, and cursed it, longing for the day when Muspelheim's armies would sweep it down in their rush against Asgard. East of Midgard lay a place worse than any in Jotunheim, Jarnvid, the Iron Wood. There dwelt the foulest witches, ruled by a hag who bore many sons that took the shape of wolves. 2 were Skoll and Hati, hunters of Sol the sun and Mani the moon. A third, Managarm, would be filled with men's blood, swallow the moon and stain heaven and earth with gore. To Jarnvid Loki journeyed. He wed one of the witches there, Angerboda, and she bore him children that took dread shapes. Loki's offspring were the most terrible foes that would arise against the Aesir and the Vanir in the time called the Twilight of the Gods. Chapter 4, The Valkyrie. Against the time when the riders of Muspelheim, with giants and the dark powers of the underworld, would bring on battle, Odin All-Father prepared a host of defenders for Asgard. They were not Aesir nor Vanir but mortal men, heroes chosen from the slain on Midgard's battlefields. To choose these heroes, and to grant victory to those he willed, Odin sent battle maidens to the fields of war. Beautiful and fearless they were, and wise as well. To them Odin had shown the runes of wisdom. Valkyries, the choosers of the slain, they were named. Those taken from the field became Odin's champions, called the Einherjar. For them he made ready a great hall, Valhalla, the hall of the slain. Valhalla had 540 doors, and through each might pass 800 champions. Every day the champions donned their armor, took their weapons from the walls, and went forth to fight one another. Wounded men were made whole again. In peace and fellowship they sat to the feast Odin prepared. Odin himself drank wine with his champions, though he ate no meat. For meat they had the boar Saehrimnir. Each day the boar was killed and cooked, and every morning it was whole again. For drink they had the mead made from the milk of the goat Hydrun, which browsed on the leaves of the tree Laradir. And the Valkyries, wise and fearless, moved among them, filling the drinking horns with heady mead. Youngest of the Valkyries was Brynhild. Yet Odin had shown her more of the runes of wisdom than to any of her sisters. When her time came to go down into Midgard, he gave her a swan feather dress, such as he had given to 3 other Valkyrie sisters, Alvit, Alrun, and Hladgrun. In the dazzling plumage of a swan the young battle maiden flew from Asgard. She had not yet been to battle. Waters drew her, and waiting on the All-Father's will, she sought out a lake with golden sands and bathed there as a maiden. Near this lake dwelt a young hero named Agnar. One day, as Agnar lay by the shore, he saw a swan of dazzling plumage settle among the reeds. While she bathed, the swan feather dress slipped from her, and Agnar saw the swan change to a woman. So bright her hair, so swift her movement, he knew her for one of Odin's battle maidens, one of those who give victory and choose the slain. Daring, Agnar resolved to keep her, even if he brought on himself Odin's wrath. He hid the swan feather dress in the reeds. When she came from the water she could not fly. Agnar returned the dress only after she promised to be his battle maiden. As they spoke, Brynhild saw in him a hero whom Asgard might aid. Agnar was brave and noble. Brynhild stayed with him as his battle maiden. She taught him much of the runes of wisdom she knew, and she showed him that Odin's last hope lay in the bravery of men, that with the chosen from the slain as his champions he would make stand for Asgard. Always Brynhild rode with Agnar's host. Above the battles she hovered, her bright hair and flashing dress outshining spears, swords, and shields. But the gray-bearded King Helmgunr waged war against young Agnar. Odin favored Helmgunr and promised him victory. Brynhild knew the All-Father's will. Yet she gave victory to Agnar, not to Helmgunr. The moment she thwarted Odin's will, Brynhild was doomed. Never again might she enter Asgard. She was now a mortal woman, and the Norns began to spin her mortal thread. Odin was sorrowful that the wisest of his battle maidens could no longer walk the benches at Valhalla. He rode down on Sleipnir to where Brynhild lay. When he came before her, it was his head that was bowed first, not hers. She now knew the bitter price the world of men paid for Asgard's strength. The bravest and noblest were taken from Midgard to fill Odin's ranks. Brynhild's heart swelled with anger at Asgard's rulers. She cared no more to belong to them. Odin, she answered when he asked if she would have aught in her mortal life, not save this, that in my mortal life no one but a man without fear, the bravest hero in the world, may claim me for wife. All-Father bowed in thought. It shall be as thou hast asked, he said. Only he who is without fear shall come near thee. On the mountain called Hindfell he had a hall built, facing south. 10 dwarfs built it of black stone. Round it Odin set a wall of mounting, circling fire. He did more. He took a thorn from the tree of sleep and put it into the flesh of the battle maiden. With helmet on and the breastmail of the Valkyrie upon her, Odin lifted Brynhild in his arms, carried her through the wall of mounting, circling fire, and laid her on the couch within the hall. There she would lie in slumber until the hero without fear rode through the flames and woke her to mortal life. He bade her farewell and rode back to Asgard on Sleipnir. He could not foresee what fate would be hers as a mortal. The fire he left mounted and circled the hall the dwarfs had built. 4 ages that flame would stand as a fence around Brynhild, once a Valkyrie who lay sleeping upon Hindfell. Chapter 5. The Children of Loki. Against the time when the riders of Muspelheim, with giants and the dark powers of the underworld, would bring battle, Odin All-Father prepared defenders for Asgard. They were not Aesir nor Vanir but mortal men, heroes chosen from the slain on Midgard's battlefields. Odin sent battle maidens to the fields to choose these heroes and to grant victory to those he willed. Beautiful, fearless, and wise, Odin had shown them the runes of wisdom. They were called Valkyries, the choosers of the slain. Those taken from the field became the Einherjar. For them Odin made Valhalla, the hall of the slain. 540 doors, and from each might pass 800 champions. Each day the champions donned armor, took their weapons, and fought one another. Wounded men were made whole again, and in peace they sat to the feast Odin prepared. Odin drank with them but ate no meat. Their meat was the boar Saramir, slain and cooked each day and whole again by morning. Their drink was the mead from the goat Hydrun, which browsed on the leaves of the tree Laridir. The Valkyries moved among them, filling the drinking horns with heady mead. Youngest of the Valkyries was Brynhild, yet Odin had shown her more of the runes than to any sister. When she was sent to Midgard he gave her a swan feather dress, as he had given to Alvit, Alrin, and Hladgrun. In that dazzling plumage she flew down from Asgard. Not yet to battle, she was drawn to waters. Awaiting the All-Father's will, she sought a lake with golden sands and bathed there as a maiden. Near the lake lived a young hero, Agnar. One day as he lay by the shore, a swan of dazzling plumage came down among the reeds. While she bathed, the swan dress slipped off and the swan became a woman. Bright of hair and swift of movement, she was a Valkyrie, one who gives victory and chooses the slain. Daring Agnar hid her swan feather dress so she could not fly away. He returned it only after she promised to be his battle maiden. Brynhild saw in him a hero whom Asgard might aid. Brave and noble, Agnar welcomed her learning. She taught him what she knew of the runes and showed that Odin's last hope lay in the bravery of men. The chosen from the slain would be his champions. Always she hovered above Agnar's host, her bright hair and flashing dress outshining spears and shields. But the gray-bearded king Helmgunr made war on Agnar. Odin favored Helmgunr and promised him victory. Brynhild knew Odin's will, yet she gave the victory to Agnar. The instant she thwarted the Allfather, Brynhild was doomed. Never again could she enter Asgard. She was now mortal, and the Norns began to weave her fate. Odin sorrowed that his wisest battle maiden would not walk the benches of Valhalla. He rode on Sleipnir to Brynhild. When he stood before her, it was his head that bowed. She understood the bitter price the world of men paid for Asgard's strength. The bravest were taken from Midgard to fill Odin's ranks. Her heart swelled with anger against Asgard's rulers. She no longer wished to belong to them. Odin, she said when he asked what she would have in mortal life, not save this, that no one but a man without fear, the bravest hero in the world, may claim me for wife. All-Father bowed. It shall be as thou hast asked, he said. Only he who is without fear shall come near thee. On Heimfell he had a hall built, facing south. 10 dwarfs built it of black stone. Round it Odin set a wall of mounting, circling fire. He took a thorn from the tree of sleep and put it into Brynhild's flesh. With helmet on and breastmail upon her, he carried her through the wall of circling fire and laid her upon the couch within the hall. There she would sleep until the hero without fear rode through the flames and woke her to mortal life. He rode back to Asgard on Sleipnir. He could not foresee her mortal fate. The fire remained, mounting and circling the hall the dwarfs had built. For ages that flame would fence Brynhild, once a Valkyrie, while she lay sleeping upon Heimfell. Chapter 6, Baldur's Doom. Against the time when the riders of Muspelheim, with the giants and the dark powers of the underworld, would bring battle, Odin All-Father prepared 2 places that gave strength and joy to the Aesir and the Vanir. The garden where Iduna gathered her apples, and the peace stead, where Baldur the well-beloved dwelt in the palace Breidablik. In the peace stead no crime had been done, no blood shed, no falseness spoken. Contentment came to all when they thought on that place. Had it not been for Baldur's presence, the minds of the Aesir and the Vanir might have turned gloomy and stern, thinking always of the dire things arrayed against them. Baldur was beautiful, so fair that the white blossoms of the earth took his name. He was happy, so happy that all birds sang his name. So just and wise was he that his judgments were not to be altered. Nothing foul or unclean had ever come near his dwelling. 'Tis Breidablik called, where Baldur the Fair hath built him a bower, in the land where I know least loathliness lies. Healing was done in Baldur's stead. Tyr's wrist was made whole after Fenrir's bite. There Frey's mind grew less troubled by the foreboding Loki had stirred in him. After Fenrir was bound, the Aesir and Vanir knew a time of contentment. They spent bright days in Baldur's stead, listening to the birds. There Bragi the poet wove into his endless tale the story of Thor's adventures among the giants. But foreboding reached even Baldur's home. One day little Nasa, child of Freya and the lost Odin, came in such sorrow that none outside could comfort her. Nanna, Baldur's gentle wife, took the child on her lap and soothed her. Nasa told of a fearful dream. She had dreamed of Hela, half-living woman, half-corpse, coming into Asgard and saying, "A lord of the Aesir I must have to dwell with me in my realm beneath the earth." Nasa's fear was such that she fell into deep sorrow. Silence fell when Nasa told her dream. Nanna looked to Odin, and Odin, looking at Frigga, saw fear enter her breast. Odin went to his watchtower Hlitskjaf and waited until Hugin and Munin returned. His ravens flew through the world and brought him news. They told how Ratatosk the squirrel had heard from the brood of serpents gnawing at Yggdrasil's root, that in Hela's house a bed was spread and a chair left empty for some lordly comer. Odin thought it better that Fenrir ranged through Asgard than that Hela win one of them to fill that seat. He mounted Sleipnir and rode toward the abodes of the dead. For 3 days and nights he rode in silence and darkness. Once Garm, a hound of Helheim, broke loose and bayed upon Sleipnir's tracks. For a day and night Garm pursued them, and Odin smelled blood from the hound's jaws. At last he came to a field of the dead, wrapped in shrouds. He called one up, Valva, a dead prophetess. When he spoke her name he uttered a rune that breaks the dead's sleep. There was a groan, a head and shoulders rose from the shrouded ones. Who calls on Valva the prophetess? The rains have drenched my flesh and the storms have shaken my bones for more seasons than the living know. No living voice has right to wake me, she said. It is Vegdom the wanderer who calls. For whom is a bed prepared and a seat left empty in Hela's house? For Baldur, Odin's son, is the bed prepared and the seat left empty. Now let me go back to my sleep with the dead. Odin pressed on. Who stands with an unbowed head and will not lament for Baldur? Answer Valva. Thou sayest far, but thou canst not see clearly. Thou art Odin. I can see clearly but not far. Let me go back. Valva. Odin cried again. Thou canst not wake me any more until Muspelheim's fires blaze above my head, she answered. There followed silence in the dead field. Odin turned Sleipnir and rode back through gloom for 4 days to Asgard. Frigga had felt Odin's fear. She looked toward Baldur and saw Hela's shade between her and her son. Yet she heard the birds sing in the peace stead and thought Baldur safe. To be sure, she went to everything that could harm him and took from each an oath. Fire, water, iron and all metals, earths and stones, great trees, birds and beasts, creeping things, poisons and diseases, all swore not to harm Baldur. When Frigga told what she had done, gloom lifted. Hela might have a seat prepared below, but fire nor water, nor iron nor any metal, nor earth nor stone nor great wood, nor bird nor beast nor creeping thing, nor poison nor disease could help her take Baldur. Hela has no arms to draw you to her, cried the Aesir and the Vanir to Baldur. Hope returned. They made games to honor Baldur. In the peace stead they brought all the things that had sworn safely against him. Neither thrown battle-axe nor sling stone, nor burning brand nor flood could harm him. The Aesir and Vanir laughed to see missiles fall harmlessly while dwarfs and friendly giants joined the sport. But Loki the hater came with that throng and watched. He saw Baldur smiling under blows that could not hurt him. He changed shape into an old woman and mingled with those making sport. He spoke to dwarfs and friendly giants. None would tell him the meaning but sent him to Frigga. At Fensaler, Frigga took the pretended old woman kindly. Loki, calling himself Groa the Enchantress, said he could draw stones from Thor's head and spoke a true tale he had heard. Now I remember the rest of the charm, he said, but will you not tell me, O Queen, what these games mean? Frigga told him. They throw all manner of heavy and dangerous things at Baldur, and all Asgard cheers because none will hurt him. From all things, lady, is there nothing that has not sworn? There is one thing I passed by, the mistletoe. It is small and weak, rootless, growing on the eastern side of Valhalla. Surely the mistletoe could not harm Baldur? The pretended enchantress hobbled away. Not far did Loki go. He hurried to the eastern side of Valhalla where a great oak bore a little bush of mistletoe. He broke off a spray and went back to the games. All were laughing as Loki drew near. Giants overthrew, dwarfs could not throw far, Aesir and Vanna threw wide. One stood joyless, Hoda, Baldur's blind brother. Why enter not the sport? Loki asked in his old woman voice. I have no missile, Hoda said. Hermod the nimble, Baldur's brother, stepped forth. He mounted Sleipnir and rode down to Hela. For 9 days and nights Hermod rode through rugged glens into darkness. He came to the river Gile and to the gold-glittering bridge. The pale maid who guards the bridge spoke. The hue of life is on thee, said Modguder. Why dost thou journey to Hela's realm? I am Hermod. I go to see if Hela will take ransom for Baldur. Fearful is Hela's house. All round it is a steep wall, even thy steed might hardly leap. The threshold is precipice, the bed care, the table hunger, the hanging burning anguish. If all things still lament Baldur, Hela will have to take ransom. Thou mayst not pass until it is sure that all things lament him. Go back and make sure. If thou return and tell me all things still lament, I will let thee pass. Hermod rode back and found all things lamenting for Baldur. Joyously he rode on, met the Vanir, and together they sought everything to learn whether each still wept. But at a cave he found a hag with blackened teeth who raised no lament. She was thocht in guise. If thou art the crow, make lament for Baldur, Hermod said. I, thocht, will make no lament. Let Hela keep what she holds, the hag answered. I will weep dry tears for him. She hobbled into her cave and a crow flew out. Hermod knew she was thocht and followed her as she croaked, let Hela keep what she holds. Then Hermod knew, there was one thing in the world that would not lament for Baldur. The Vanir returned with him. Head bowed over Sleipnir's mane, Hermod rode into Asgard. They prepared Baldur for the burning. First they covered his body with a rich robe, and by it each laid his most precious possession. One by one they kissed his brow and took their leave. Nanna, his gentle wife, flung herself upon his breast. Her heart broke, she died of grief. The Aesir and the Vanir wept anew. They placed Nanna's body beside Baldur's. Baldur was to lie upon his great ship, Ringhorn, with Nanna beside him. The ship would be launched and set aflame. No one among the Aesir or the Vanir could set the great ship afloat. They sent for Hyrrokin, a giantess. She came riding a monstrous wolf, its bridle braided of twisted serpents. 4 giants held the wolf fast when she landed. With a single mighty shove she sent Ringhorn into the sea. The rollers struck out fire as the vessel dashed away. Fires mounted the ship. In the blaze one figure was seen bending over Baldur, whispering into his ear, Odin All-Father. Then he stepped down from the ship, and the flames rose into a mighty burning. Speechless, with tears upon their faces, the Aesir and the Vanir watched while all things lamented, Baldur the Beautiful is dead, is dead. What did Odin whisper into Baldur's ear as the flames rose? He whispered of a heaven above Asgard that Surtur's fire could not reach, and of a time when life and beauty would return after the worlds of men and gods had been tried through with fire. Take this and throw it, Loki said. It is a twig of the mistletoe. I cannot see, Hoda answered. I will guide thy hand, Loki said. He put the twig in Hoda's hand and guided it. The twig flew and struck Baldur's breast. Baldur fell with a deep groan. The Aesir, Vanna, dwarfs and friendly giants stood in doubt and amazement. Loki slipped away. Blind Hoda stood still, not knowing his throw had killed Baldur. A wailing rose about the peace stead. The Aesir and the Vanna lamented. Odin came among them. Hela has won our Baldur, Odin said to Frigga as they bent over their son. Nay, Frigga answered. Frigga asked who would go and ride down to Hela's realm and ask ransom for Baldur. Whoever would seek the queen might win her favor and bring Baldur back. Odin's steed was ready. Chapter 7. Loki's Punishment. Let Hela keep what she holds. Let Hela keep what she holds, croaked a crow as she flew north. That crow was the hag Thocht in shape, and Thocht was Loki. He went into the wastes of Jotunheim and lived there as a crow, hiding from the god's wrath. He told the giants that the time had come to build the ship Naglfar, the ship made of the nails of dead men, destined to sail to Asgard at Ragnarok with the giant Hreimr at the helm. Hearing him, the giants began the ship's work, the very thing gods and men had prayed long for would never be built. Tired of Jotunheim, Loki flew south as a lizard and hid among Muspelheim's rocks. He made the fire giants glad when he told them of Frey's lost sword and of Tyr's missing hand. Yet in Asgard one still wept for him, Siguna, his wife. Though he had forsaken her and shown her hatred, she wept for the husband who had brought so much evil. Loki left Muspelheim and came among men. He chose the river where, long before, he had slain the otter, on the very rock where the otter had eaten the salmon that day. There he built a house with 4 doors so he might see every way of escape. He kept, for safety, the power to turn himself into a salmon. Often he swam in the river as a fish. Even the fishes he hated. From flax and yarn he wove a net so men might catch them. The god's anger did not abate. Loki, as Thocht, had given Hela power to hold Baldur, and he had put the sprig of mistletoe in Hoda's hand. Baldur was dead, Asgard felt emptied, and the Aesir and Vanir brooded on the dire things arrayed against them. Odin in Valhalla busied himself with ways to gather heroes to defend Asgard. At last the gods found Loki's dwelling. He was weaving his net when they came from 4 directions. He flung the net into the fire and sprang into the river as a salmon. The gods found only burned-out embers. One among them read the signs in those ashes. From the marks of the burnt net he made a new net and set out down the river, dragging it through the water. Loki, seeing his own weaving used against him, hid between 2 stones. The net passed over him. The gods felt the net touch something at the bottom. They fastened weights and dragged it again. Loki rose and swam for the sea. As he leaped over a waterfall, the gods followed, the net behind him. Thor waited, ready to seize him. At the river mouth, a great eagle hovered over the waves. Loki turned back, leapt to clear the net, but Thor, near the net, seized the salmon's tail. Loki struggled like no fish before. He freed all but his tail. Thor held on, drew him among the rocks, and forced him back into his proper shape. They bound him in a cavern, tied to 3 sharp rocks with cords of wolf sinew that were turned to iron bands. Skadi, with her fierce giant blood, found a serpent and hung it above Loki's head. Its venom fell drop by drop, bringing him endless agony. Siguna, pitying, exiled herself from Asgard and sat in the darkness and cold of the cavern. She held a cup to catch the venom, easing his torment. Now and then she had to turn aside and empty the cup, and then the drops fell on Loki and he screamed and twisted in his bonds. Men felt the earthquake when he writhed. There Loki remained, bound and tormented, until the coming of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Chapter 1. Sigurd's Youth. A northern kingdom in Midgard was ruled by a wise and good king named Alv. In his house he raised a foster son called Sigurd. Sigurd was fearless and strong. Once as a boy he caught a forest bear and drove it to the king's hall. His mother was Hiordis. Before Sigurd's birth, Alv and his father sailed across the sea and came upon the aftermath of a great battle. There were no living warriors, only heaps of slain. One figure stood out, a white-bearded old man, noble in bearing, with the arms of a king. Searching the forest for survivors, they found 2 women hidden in a dell. One was tall, with ruddy hair and steadfast blue eyes, dressed like a serving maid. The other wore rich queenly raiment, but she was small of stature and shy in manner. When Alv and his father drew near, the woman in royal dress spoke first. "Help us, lords, and protect us, and we will show you where a treasure is hidden. A great battle has been fought between the men of King Ligni and the men of King Sigmund. King Ligni's men have prevailed and gone from the field. King Sigmund is slain. We of his household hid his treasure, and we will show it to you." Alv's father asked, "The noble warrior who lies yonder, white-haired and white-bearded, was he King Sigmund?" "Yes, lord," answered the woman. "I am his queen." "We have heard of King Sigmund," said the old king. "His fame and the fame of his race, the Volsungs, are over the wide world." Alf said nothing, but his eyes lingered on the woman in the serving maid's garb. She knelt, wrapping 2 pieces of a broken sword in a beast skin. "You will surely protect us, good lords?" begged the woman in the queenly dress. "Yeah, wife of King Sigmund, we will protect you and your serving maid," said Alf's father. The women led the warriors to a wild place by the sea and showed where Sigmund's treasure lay among the rocks: cups of gold, mighty arm rings, jeweled collars. Alv and his father put the treasure on their ship, brought the women aboard, and sailed away. This was before Sigurd was born. Alv's mother was keen-eyed, little escaped her notice. She observed that of the 2 women her son and husband had brought home, the one in the serving maid's dress had unflinching eyes and high beauty, while the one in queenly robes was timid and constrained. One night, while the women of the household sat spinning wool by torchlight, the queen mother spoke. To the woman in queenly dress she asked, "Thou art good at rising in the morning. How dost thou know in the dark hours when it is time to dawn?" "When I was young," the woman said, "I rose to milk the cows, and ever since I wake at the same hour." The queen mother thought to herself, "It is a strange country where royal maids milk the cows." Then she asked the woman in the serving maid's clothes, "How dost thou know in the dark hours when the dawn is coming?" "My father," the woman said, "gave me the ring of gold I wear, and always before it is time to rise I feel it grow cold on my finger." Again the queen mother puzzled, "It is a strange country where serving maids wear rings of gold." When the others had left, she spoke plainly to the 2. To the woman dressed as a serving maid she said, "Thou art the queen." The woman in royal dress then confessed, "Thou art right, lady. She is the queen, and I cannot any longer pretend to be other than I am." The true queen spoke. "I am Hiordis, a king's daughter, the queen of King Sigmund who was slain. Because a king sought me, I changed clothes with my serving maid to baffle those who might carry me away. Know that I am Hiordis. Many suitors came to my father for my hand. 2 I heard much of, King Ligni and King Sigmund of the Volsung race. My father left the choice to me. King Sigmund was old but the most famous warrior in the world, and I chose him rather than King Ligni. We were wed. King Ligni still desired me and came against Sigmund with a great host. We hid our treasure by the sea, and my maid and I watched the battle from the forest's edge. With Gram, his wondrous sword, and his own great strength, Sigmund harried the enemy. But suddenly he was struck down. A stranger entered the fight when it seemed Sigmund's foes must give way. With his spear he struck at Sigmund's sword, and Gram was broken in two. Then Sigmund received his death wound. "It must be I shall die," he said, "for the spear that broke my sword was Gungnir, Odin's spear. Only that spear could shatter the sword Odin gave my fathers. Now I go to Valhalla, Odin's Hall of Heroes. I weep," I said, "because I have no son to call himself of the great Volsung race." "For that you need not weep," said Sigmund. "A son will be born to you, my son and yours, and you shall name him Sigurd. Take the broken pieces of my sword and give them to my son when he shall be of warrior age." Then Sigmund's life failed. Odin's Valkyrie took his spirit from the field. I lifted the broken pieces and with my serving maid hid in a deep dell. Your husband and your son found us and brought us to your kingdom, where we have been kindly treated, O queen. So Hiordis told her tale to Alv's mother. Soon after, a child was born to her, the son of Sigmund. She named him Sigurd. After Sigurd's birth the old king died and Prince Alv became king. He married Hiordis, the ruddy, unflinching woman, and raised her son Sigurd in his house as his foster son. Before he reached warrior age, Sigurd was famed for strength, swiftness, and a fearless glow about him. Mighty is the race he springs from, the Volsungs, men said. Sigurd will be as mighty as any who went before. He built himself a hut in the forest to hunt and to live near the man who would train him. That man was Regan, a maker of swords and a cunning teacher. Some said Regan was an enchanter who had been in the world longer than the living remembered. He taught Sigurd metalcraft and old lore, but he watched Sigurd as a lynx watches a stronger beast. One day Regan said, "King Alv has thy father's treasure, men say, and yet he treats thee as if thou wert thrall-born." Sigurd knew Regan meant to provoke him for his own ends. "King Alv is wise and good," Sigurd answered. "He would give me riches if I needed them. Thou goest about as a footboy, not as a king's son." "Any day I wish I may have a horse to ride," said Sigurd. Regan turned away to the smithy. Angered, Sigurd flung down his irons and ran to the horse pastures by the great river. There grazed the king's best horses, gray, black, roan, and chestnut. Near them stood a stranger, ancient yet robust, in a strange blue cloak and leaning on a staff. Though young, Sigurd saw in him a loftiness beyond any king he had known. "Thou art going to choose a horse for thyself," the stranger said. "Yeah, father," Sigurd answered. "Drive the herd into the river," the stranger told him. Sigurd did so. Some horses were swept away, others swam back to the bank. One swam across and threw up his head as if for victory. Sigurd caught him, a gray horse, proud and young with a flowing mane. He mounted him and brought him back across the river. "Thou hast done well," said the stranger. "Grani, whom thou hast taken, is of the breed of Sleipnir, Odin's horse." "And I am of the race of Odin's sons?" cried Sigurd, eyes bright. "My father was Sigmund, his father Volsung, his father Rerir, and his father Sigi, son of Odin." The stranger, one-eyed and leaning on his staff, looked steadily. "All thou hast named were as swords of Odin to send men to Valhalla," he said. "Of all those thou namest, none but were chosen by Odin's Valkyries for battles in Asgard. Too much of what is brave and noble in the world is taken by Odin for his battles," Sigurd cried. The stranger bowed his head. "What wouldst thou?" he asked, as if speaking to the world rather than to Sigurd. "What wouldst thou? The leaves wither and fall from Yggdrasil, and the day of Ragnarok comes." Then looking up, he spoke to Sigurd, "The time is near when thou mayst possess the pieces of thy father's sword." With that the man in the blue cloak climbed the hill and vanished from sight. Sigurd held back Grani for a moment, then let him gallop along the river, the horse as swift as the wind. Chapter 2: The Sword Gram and the Dragon Fafnir. Mounted on Grani, his proud horse, Sigurd rode to the hall and made himself known to King Alv and to Hiordis, his mother. Before the hall he shouted the Volsung name. King Alv, watching him, felt that this youth was a match for the strength of many men. Hiordis saw the blue flame in his eyes and thought his path through the world would be as swift and sure as an eagle's. After showing himself, Sigurd dismounted, stroked Grani, and told the horse he might go back to pasture with the herd. The proud steed breathed over him and bounded away. Sigurd then walked to the smithy in the forest where Regan worked. No one was in the hut at first, but over the anvil, in the smoke and heat, lay a work of Regan's, a great iron shield. Hammered and colored upon it was the image of a dragon, lengthening from a cave. The sight filled Sigurd with hatred. The light and smoke of the forge made the dragon seem alive in its element of fire. While he stared, Regan the cunning smith entered. He stood by the wall watching, bent, hair over his fiery eyes, like a beast in hiding. "Aye, thou look'st on Fafnir the dragon, son of the Volsungs," Regan said. "Mayhap it is thou who wilt slay him." "I would not strive with such a beast," Sigurd answered. "He is all horrible to me. With a good sword thou mightst slay him and win more renown than thy fathers," Regan whispered. "I shall win renown as my fathers did, by battle with men and conquest of kingdoms," Sigurd said. "Thou art not a true Volsung if thou wouldst not go where danger and dread lie." Regan spoke of Fafnir's lair across the desolate land, how the dragon's coming had withered the country into the barren Nida Heath. If Sigurd would kill Fafnir, the land might be made fair again and its people restored, adding to King Alv's domain. "I have naught to do with slaying dragons," Sigurd replied. "I must make war on King Ligny and avenge Sigmund, my father." Regan pressed his case further. He told how the dragon guarded a hoard the likes of which the world had not seen, a hoard once owned by the dwarf Envari, paid as ransom even by the gods. "Win that hoard," Regan said, "and thou shalt be as one of the gods." "How dost thou know this?" Sigurd asked. "I know," Regan answered, and promised some day to tell more. Sigurd would hear no more. "Make me a sword," he said. "A sword mightier than any in the world. Thou art the best smith among men, do this." Regan set to work in earnest. He put the weightiest iron into the furnace and used secret tools for a masterwork. Sigurd tended the fire, quenched the blade at Regan's call, and watched the sword take shape. By day his thoughts were of the blade and of war on King Ligny. By night his dreams were of Fafnir, the barren heath, the cave, the dragon crawling with scales like mail and a body as long as a company of men. When the first sword was finished, Sigurd tested it. He laid Regan's dragon shield upon the anvil and struck. The blade sheared away part of the shield, but then broke in his hands. "Thou hast made a knave's sword," Sigurd cried in anger. "Make me a Volsung sword." He mounted Grani and rode like a wind. Regan took more iron and forged again, muttering runes that touched on the hoard Fafnir guarded. Sigurd dreamt of treasure he did not covet. After 3 days' work, Regan presented a finer sword. Sigurd struck the dragon image on the shield. This blade cut through the shield but shivered on the anvil. Furious again, Sigurd rode away. He went to his mother's bower and told Hiordis, "I must have a greater sword than those made of earth's metal. Mother, give me the broken pieces of Gram, the Volsung's sword." Hiordis looked him over and saw he was fit to wield Gram. She fetched from a great stone chest the beast skin that wrapped the fragments and gave them to her son. "Behold the halves of Gram," she said. "Gram, the mighty sword that Odin left in the brandstock of the Volsung house. I would see Gram new shapen in thy hand." She embraced him and told him of Gram's glory and of his father's deeds. Sigurd woke Regan and set the broken halves before him. He commanded that they be reforged into a single sword. Regan worked, and when at last Sigurd held the new blade in his hand, fire ran along its edge. He set the dragon shield on the anvil, raised Gram with both hands, and struck. The sword cut through the shield and sheared the anvil itself, taking away its iron horn. Sigurd knew then he held the Volsung sword. He called to Grani and rode to the riverbank. Shreds of wool floated on the water. Sigurd struck them with Gram and they were cleanly divided at the water's edge. Gram could cut hardness and fineness alike. That night Gram lay under his head as he slept, yet his dreams remained filled with images he had not seen by day, the glitter of a hoard he did not desire, and the gleam of dragon scales, a loathly thing he had yet to meet. Chapter 3: The Dragon's Blood. Mounted on Grani, Sigurd rode to King Alv's hall and made himself known. Before the doors he shouted the Volsung name. King Alv saw a youth fit to match many men, and Hiordis, his mother, read in his blue-flamed eyes the path of an eagle. He stroked Grani, bade the horse take pasture, and then went to the smith's hut in the forest where Regan worked. No man was there at first, but over the anvil lay Regan's craft, a great iron shield. Hammered and colored upon it was the image of a dragon lengthening out of a cave. The sight filled Sigurd with loathing. The forge's light and smoke made the dragon seem alive in fire. Regan entered, bent, hair over fiery eyes, watching as a beast watches behind a hedge. "Aye, thou look'st on Fafnir the dragon, son of the Volsungs," he said. "Perchance it is thou who wilt slay him." "I would not strive with such a beast," Sigurd answered. "He is loathsome to me. With a good sword thou mightst slay him and win greater renown than thy fathers," Regan urged. He told of Nida Heath, blasted by the dragon's breath, and of Fafnir's den in a cave. "Kill him," Regan said, "and the land may be made fair again," and the folk returned. I have naught to do with slaying dragons, Sigurd replied. I must make war on King Ligni and avenge Sigmund, my father. Regan pressed the other lure, treasure. Fafnir guards a hoard unlike any seen, a hoard of the dwarf Andvari, given long ago as ransom. Win that hoard and thou shalt be as one of the gods. How knowst thou this? Sigurd asked. I know, Regan answered. But Sigurd would hear no more of gold. Make me a sword, he said, one mightier than any. Thou art the best smith among men, do this. Regan set his forge to work. Sigurd tended the fire and quenched the blade as it was formed. By day his thoughts were of the blade and of war. By night his dreams were of Fafnir, the barren heath, the cave, scales glittering like mail, a length like a marching company. When the first sword was made, Sigurd tested it. He set the dragon shield upon the anvil and struck. The blade sheared some of the shield, but then broke in his hands. Thou hast made a knave's sword, Sigurd cried. Make me a Volsung sword. He rode away like the wind. Regan took more iron and worked runes into the forging. Sigurd dreamed of treasure he did not covet. A second sword fared no better. It cut the shield but shivered on the anvil. Furious, Sigurd sought his mother. Give me the broken pieces of Gram, he said. Gram, my father's sword, must be reforged. Iordis measured him and saw a fit hand. From a great stone chest she brought forth the beast skin that wrapped the broken blade and gave the halves to her son. Behold the halves of Gram, she said. Gram that Odin once left in the brandstock of the Volsung house. I would see Gram new-shapen in thy hand. Regan worked the pieces together. When at last Sigurd held the reforged blade, fire ran along its edge. He placed the dragon shield on the anvil, raised Gram with both hands, and smote. Gram cut through the shield and sheared away the anvil's horn. Sigurd knew then he held the Volsung sword. He rode to the riverbank. Shreds of wool floated on the current. With Gram he struck and the wool was cleanly divided at the water's edge. Gram could cut hardness and fineness alike. That night Gram lay under his head as he slept, yet his dreams still carried visions he had not seen by day, the glitter of a hoard he did not desire, and the sheen of dragon scales, a loathly foe he had yet to meet. Sigurd raised war with Alv's men against King Ligni, the slayer of his father. The campaign was short. Ligni was old and his hold on his folk weak. Sigurd slew him, took his treasure, and added Ligni's lands to Alv's realm. Still unsatisfied, for he had imagined sterner contest and harder won renown, Sigurd left his men on the hills and rode to look across Nida Heath at Fafnir's haunt. The heath lay blasted and barren from the dragon's breath. He watched all day. At evening Fafnir lengthened from his cave and moved across the heath like a ship with many oars. Sigurd returned to Regan and said, Tell me all thou knowst of Fafnir. Regan told the old tale in rune-laden speech, how the dwarf Andvari's hoard was taken by one of the Aesir and given to Hreidmar, Regan's father, how Hreidmar's son, Fafnir, slew his sire and took the hoard, then changed into a dragon to guard it. Regan confessed his covetousness and that he had lengthened his life by his father's magic, hoping to see Fafnir slain and claim the hoard. I care little for the hoard, Sigurd said. I care that he has wasted the king's lands and is an evil thing to men. I would have renown in slaying Fafnir. With Gram thou canst slay him, Regan cried. He told a plan. The dragon's track to the river was broad. Dig a pit in the middle, lie beneath it, and thrust up through Fafnir's mail when he passes. Gram alone may pierce that mail. Sigurd agreed. He had Grani sent away so the horse would not alarm the dragon. Regan took the horse to a cave and pretended to be afraid. Sigurd lay in the pit and practiced thrusts upward with Gram. He feared, however, the dragon's blood and venom might sweep him away, so he dug a series of pits and a passage between them to escape the flow. When Fafnir came, Sigurd heard his tread and mournful cry. The dragon's head hung over the pit. Sigurd struck mightily beneath the shoulder toward the heart. Gram pierced the hard glittering scales. He drew himself through the passage into the second pit as the dragon's envenomed blood drenched the first. Then he rose, ran to the wounded beast, and thrust Gram through Fafnir's neck. The dragon reared and screamed a death scream, tore up rocks with his talons, and fell with his head in the blood-filled pit. Regan, who had waited afar, heard the scream and came. Seeing Sigurd alive, fury flashed through him, for he had planned that Sigurd should be drowned and burned in the pit. He mastered himself and put on a pleased countenance. Now shall thou be called Sigurd, Fafnir's bane, he cried, flattering him, for he had an errand yet. Fafnir is slain, Sigurd said. Now I will show myself to King Alv and my mother, and the gold will be spoil. Wait, Regan urged. With Gram cut the dragon open and take out his heart. Roast it, If I eat of it I shall grow wiser. Do this for me who taught thee to slay Fafnir." Sigurd obeyed. He cut out the heart and set it upon stakes to roast. Regan withdrew. The forest grew silent. As Sigurd tended the fire, a drop of the dragon's roasting blood fell on his hand and burned him. He put his hand to his mouth. The burning blood touched his tongue, and suddenly he tasted the dragon's blood. He went for wood. In a clearing he saw 4 birds on a branch. Their notes were birds' notes, yet because of the blood on his tongue he understood them. One bird said, "How simple is he who has come into this dell. He thinks no ill, though one who was with him has gone away to fetch a spear to slay him. For the gold in the dragon's cave he would slay him," said a second. "If he would eat the dragon's heart himself he would know all wisdom," said a third. "But he has tasted a drop of the dragon's blood, and now he knows what we say," said the fourth. They told of a marvelous hall, the House of Flame, deep in the forest, its 10 walls named and built by dwarfs. Around it ran a ring of fire none could pass. Within slept a maiden, the wisest, bravest, and most beautiful maid in the world. Sigurd stood as one enchanted, listening, until the birds' chorus changed to alarm. "Look!" cried one. "He comes against the youth." "He comes with a spear," cried another. "Now will the youth be slain unless he be swift." Turning, Sigurd saw Regan stride toward him, grim and silent, bearing a spear. Had he tarried a moment more the spear would have pierced him. He snatched Graham to hand and flung it. Graham struck Regan through the breast. Regan gasped, I die without having laid my hands on the hoard. A curse was on the gold, Hreidmar and Fafnir, and I have perished for it. May the curse now fall on my slayer." He died. Sigurd cast the body into the pit beside Fafnir's. Then he went to eat the heart to gain the wisdom it promised, but found the fire had burnt it utterly. Chapter 4: The Story of Sigmund and Signy. He called to Grani, his proud horse. He stood upon a mound in the heath and sent forth a great shout. Grani heard him in the cave where Regan had left him and galloped to Sigurd with flowing mane and eyes flashing fire. Sigurd mounted and rode to Fafnir's cave. At the place where the dragon lay he found an iron door. With Graham, his mighty sword, he hewed through the iron and with his strong hands thrust the door back. Before him lay the treasure the dragon had guarded, masses of gold and heaps of shining jewels. Even as he looked, a shadow of evil touched him. This was the hoard the river maidens once watched beneath the water. Andvari the dwarf had forced it from them. Loki took it from Andvari, and with it came Gulvig the witch, whose mischief struck the gods. For the sake of that hoard Fafnir had slain his father Hreidmar, and Regan had plotted against Fafnir, his brother. Sigurd did not know all these things in full, yet the hoard's cursed history cast a chill over him. He meant to take it away, but not now. The bird's tail lingered in his mind. The green of the forest mattered more than the glitter. He would return with chests and carry the gold to King Alv's hall. For the present he would take only what he might wear. He found a golden helmet and set it on his head. He found a great arm ring and clasped it round his arm. On the arm ring was a small finger ring with a rune graven upon it. Sigurd slipped it on. This was the ring on which Andvari had laid his curse. Knowing no one would cross the heath to Fafnir's lair, he left the treasure unguarded. He mounted Grani and rode toward the forest to seek the House of Flame, to find the maiden who slept there, wisest, bravest, and fairest in the world. With his golden helmet gleaming over his hair, Sigurd rode on. As he rode he thought of Sigmund, his father, whose slain he had avenged. He thought also of Volsung, Sigmund's father, and of the grim deeds the Volsungs had suffered and wrought. Rerir, son of Sigi, who was son of Odin, was Volsung's father. In his first manhood Volsung built his hall around a mighty tree. Its branches rose to the roof and made the house's beams. Its trunk stood at the hall's center. They called the tree the Branstock, and the hall was the hall of the Branstock. Volsung had many children, 11 sons and 1 daughter. All his sons were strong and valiant. Volsung was a mighty chief. It was through Signy, his daughter, that feud and deadly battle came upon the house. She was wise and fair, famed throughout the lands. One day a king sent word asking for Signy's hand. Knowing of this king's deeds, Volsung sent him welcome to the hall of the Branstock. King Sigurd came with his men. When the Volsungs looked at him they did not like his face. Signy drew back and said, "This king is evil of heart and false of word." Volsung and his sons took counsel. Sigurd's force was great. If they refused he could harry their land. They had pledged Signy when they sent their message, and a long debate followed. 10 brothers counseled, "Let Signy wed the king. He is not as evil as she deems." One spoke otherwise, "We will not give our sister to this evil king." Rather let us go down fighting, with the hall of the Branstock burning above us. The one who spoke was Sigmund the youngest. Volsung, however, would not hear evil of Siggeir. We know not of his wickedness, he said. Our word is given. Let him feast here this night, and let Signy go with him. They looked to Signy. Her face was white and stern. Let it be as ye have said, my father and my brothers, she said aloud. Yet Sigmund heard her whisper to herself, it is woe for the Volsungs. The feast was laid. Fires burned and great horns of mead were passed. Suddenly a stranger entered, taller than any there, bearing such presents that all rose to him. One offered him mead, he drank. From under a blue cloak he drew a sword that made the hall shine more brightly. He walked to the Branstock and thrust the sword into the tree. The company fell silent. The stranger's voice rang out like a trumpet. The sword is for the hand that can draw it from the Branstock. Then he went out. All eyes fell upon the sword. Many touched the hilt. Volsung bade them wait. It is fitting, he said, that our guest and our son-in-law, King Siggeir, try first. Siggeir strove and failed. Anger crept over his face. His captains tried and failed. Volsung tried and failed. One by one the sons strained, and the sword would not yield, until the youngest, Sigmund, took the hilt. When Sigmund drew, the sword came free with his hand, and the hall shone again with its marvel. It was a wondrous blade, forged of finer metal by craft surpassing all. Envy rose around Sigmund. Siggeir eyed the sword greedily. I will give its weight in gold for that sword, he said. Sigmund answered proudly, if the sword were for thy hand thou shouldst have won it. The sword was not for thine, but for a Volsung's hand. Signy, watching Siggeir, saw deeper hatred in him and knew it was aimed at the Volsung race. At the feast's end Signy was wed to Siggeir. The next day she left the hall of the Branstock for his painted ship. On the beach Siggeir would not sail until each Volsung pledged to visit him as kinsmen and friends, and he insisted Sigmund bring the wonder sword. Sigurd rode toward the forest with all this in his mind. When the Volsungs came to Siggeir's coast to fulfill their pledge, they meant to go to his hall in broad daylight. But at dawn a cloaked figure crept to their ship. Sigmund, watching, knew her. Signy, he said. She warned them of treason. King Siggeir has set a great army against your coming. He hates the Volsungs root and branch. His plan is to fall upon you and take Gram, Sigmund's sword. Draw your ship into the sea and sail from this treachery. Volsung refused. The Volsungs do not depart like broken men. We gave our word to visit King Siggeir. We will go to his hall. If he dares fall upon us, then we are Volsungs. We will fight. Signy knew they would not heed warnings of odds and went back silent to the king. Siggeir knew she had warned them. He posted his men cunningly and sent a message of welcome. As the Volsungs left their ship, Siggeir's army fell upon them. Fierce was the battle. Many of Siggeir's men died beneath the Volsungs' valor, but at last Volsung himself was slain. His 11 sons were taken captive, and Gram was wrested from Sigmund's hand. The 11 princes were brought before Siggeir in his hall. He laughed. Ye are not in the hall of the Branstock now to dishonor me with scornful looks, he said. A harder fate awaits you than pulling a sword from a tree trunk. Before sundown I will see you hewn to pieces. Signy rose then, white-faced and with wide eyes. I pray not for longer life for my brothers, she said, for I know my prayers would avail naught. But dost thou not heed the proverb, Siggeir, sweet to the eye as long as the eye can see? Siggeir laughed his evil laugh. Aye, my queen, he answered, sweet to the eye so long as the eye may see their torments. They shall not die at once nor all together. I will let them see each other die. He ordered the 11 brothers taken into the forest, chained to great beams and left there. A watcher faithful to Signy came to her the next day. What has befallen my brothers? She asked. A great wolf came and devoured the first of them, the watcher said. No tears came from Signy. The hardness about her heart grew harder. Go again, she said. The second has been devoured, the watcher told her. Still she wept not and grew harder. Day by day the watcher returned with the same doom, until only one brother remained, Sigmund the youngest. Not without device are we left at the end, Signy said. Take a pot of honey to where he is chained and smear his face with it. The watcher did as she bade. When the great wolf came she found honey upon Sigmund's face and licked. Sigmund seized her tongue with strong teeth. She struggled, he would not release her. The beam broke. Sigmund tore the wolf's jaws apart and slew her. The watcher brought word to Signy. Fierce joy moved through her. One of the Volsungs lives, she cried, and vengeance will be wrought upon King Siggeir and his house. The watcher kept to the forest paths and marked where Sigmund built a hidden hut. Often he bore tokens from Signy to him. Sigmund took to the hunter's and outlaw's life but did not leave the woods, and King Siggeir knew not that one of the Volsungs lived so near him. Chapter 5. The Story of Sigmund and Sinfiotli. As Sigurd rode through the forest he thought about Sigmund, his father, his life and death, as his mother Hiordis had told him. Sigmund had lived long as a hunter and outlaw, never venturing far from the forest in King Siggeir's land. Often he received tokens from Signy, his sister. They were the last of the Volsungs, and both knew that King Siggeir and his house must perish for the treason he had done to their father and brothers. Sigmund expected Signy to send her sons to help him. One morning, a boy of 10 appeared at his hut. Sigmund knew this was one of Signy's sons, sent to be trained as a warrior worthy of the Volsung name. Sigmund barely looked at the boy or spoke to him. As he took down his spear from the wall, he said, "There is the meal bag, boy. Mix the meal and make the bread, and we will eat when I come back." When Sigmund returned, the bread was not made. The boy stood watching the meal bag, eyes wide. "You did not make the bread?" Sigmund asked. "No," said the boy. "I was afraid to go near the bag. Something stirred within it. You have the heart of a mouse to be frightened so. Go back to your mother and tell her that you are not fit to be a Volsung warrior." So spoke Sigmund, and the boy left weeping. A year later, another son of Signy came. As before, Sigmund hardly noticed the boy and barely spoke. "There is the meal bag," he said. "Mix the meal and make ready the bread before I come back." Again, Sigmund returned to find the bread unmade, and the boy had shrunk away from the bag. "Did you not make the bread?" Sigmund asked. "No," said the boy. "Something stirred inside the bag and I was afraid. You have the heart of a mouse. Go back to your mother and tell her she has none to raise the making of a Volsung warrior in you." This boy also went away weeping. At that time Signy had no other sons. But in desperation one was born to her, a child born of a desperate thought. When he grew she sent him to Sigmund. "What did your mother say to you?" Sigmund asked when the boy appeared at the hut. "Nothing. She sewed my gloves to my hands and bade me pull them off." "And did you?" "Yes, and the skin came with them." "Did you weep?" "A Volsung does not weep for such a thing." Sigmund studied the boy long. He was tall, fair, broad-limbed, and his eyes showed no fear. "What would you have me do?" Sigmund asked. "There is the meal bag," Sigmund said. "Mix the meal and make the bread before I return." When he came back, the bread was baking on the coals. "What did you do with the meal?" Sigmund asked. "I mixed it. Something was in the meal, a serpent I think, but I kneaded it with the meal and now the serpent bakes on the coals." Sigmund laughed and threw his arms around the boy. "You shall not eat of that bread," he said. "You have kneaded a venomous serpent into it." The boy's name was Sinfiotli. Sigmund trained him in hunting and outlaw ways. Together they ranged far, taking vengeance on King Siggeir's men. Sinfiotli was fierce but never spoke a false word. One day, hunting in the forest, they came upon a strange house. Inside they found two men sleeping deeply, their arms heavy with gold rings. Sigmund knew these were sons of kings. Near them lay wolfskins as if cast off. Sigmund realized these men were shape changers, men who could become wolves as they roamed the woods. Sigmund and Sinfiotli put on the discarded wolfskins. Instantly they changed shape and became wolves. As wolves they roamed the forest, sometimes shifting back to men. As wolves they fell upon King Siggeir's men, killing more and more. One day Sigmund said to Sinfiotli, "You are still young and I would not have you be too rash. If you meet 7 men, fight them. But if you come on a company greater than 7, raise your voice in a wolf's cry and call me." Sinfiotli promised. One day while in wolf form, Sigmund heard a struggle. He listened for Sinfiotli's call, but it never came. Moving toward the noise, Sigmund passed 11 slain men. Then he found Sinfiotli lying in the thicket, still in wolf form, panting from battle. "You fought 11 men. Why did you not call me?" Sigmund asked. "Why call you? I am no weakling, I can fight 11 men." Sigmund was angered by this. Looking at Sinfiotli, the wolf's wild nature overtook him. Without warning, Sigmund sprang and bit Sinfiotli's throat. Sinfiotli lay gasping in death's grip. Sigmund howled in anguish, knowing the deadly power of his teeth. Then, as he licked Sinfiotli's face, Sigmund saw 2 weasels meet and begin to fight. One caught the other by the throat, biting him fiercely as if to kill. But then the victor ran and found leaves of a certain herb. He placed the leaves on the wounded weasel, and the herb healed the wound. The bitten weasel rose swiftly, whole again. Sigmund searched for that herb. As he looked, a raven flew by with a leaf in her beak. She dropped it as Sigmund approached, and the leaf was the very same as the weasel's. Sigmund took it and laid it on Sinfiotli's wound. The wound healed and Sinfiotli was well once more. They returned to their forest hut. The next day, they burnt the wolfskins and prayed to the gods that they might never be cursed again with the wolf's wild nature. From then on, Sigmund and Sinfiotli never changed shapes again. Chapter 6. The story of the vengeance of the Volsungs and the death of Sinfiotli. Sinfiotli had now grown to full strength, and the time had come to take vengeance on King Siggeir for killing Volsung and for the terrible doom he had set upon Volsung's 10 sons. Sigmund and Sinfiotli armed themselves with helmets and swords and went to King Siggeir's hall. They hid behind casks of ale near the entrance, waiting for the king's men-at-arms to leave so they could strike against King Siggeir and his attendants. Inside the hall, the younger children of King Siggeir were playing, and one of them let fall a ball that rolled behind the ale casks. The child looked after it and saw 2 men crouching, swords in hand, wearing helmets. The child told a servant, who informed the king. King Siggeir rose, gathered his men, and sent them after the hidden intruders. Sigmund and Sinfiotli leapt up and fought fiercely but were captured. They could not be killed immediately, for it was against the law to slay captives after sunset. Still, Siggeir would not keep them above ground. He ordered them to be put into a pit and buried alive beneath a mound. A great flagstone was placed to divide the pit in two, so Sigmund and Sinfiotli could hear each other struggle but could not help one another. All was done according to the king's command. As the thralls covered the pit with sods, a cloaked and hooded figure came among them. She dropped something wrapped in straw into the side where Sinfiotli lay. When the sky was shut out by the turf and soil, Sinfiotli shouted to Sigmund, "I shall not die, for the queen has thrown down to me meat wrapped in straw." A while later, Sinfiotli called again. The queen left a sword in the meat she flung down. "It is a mighty sword. I almost think it is Gram, the sword you told me of." "If it is Gram," said Sigmund, "it can cut through this flagstone. Thrust the blade against the stone and try." Sinfiotli did, and the blade went through the stone. Together, on either side, they took the sword and cut the great stone in two. Then, working side by side, they moved the turf and soil and emerged under the open sky. Before them stood King Siggeir's hall. They gathered dry wood and set it on fire, making the hall blaze. King Siggeir came to the door and shouted, "Who has fired the king's house?" Sigmund answered, "I, Sigmund, son of Volsung, so that you may pay for the treason against the Volsungs." Seeing Sigmund with Gram, the great sword, in his hands, Siggeir went back inside. Then Signy appeared, her white face stern, and Sigmund called to her, come forth, come forth." Sigmund calls, "Come out of Siggeir's burning house, and together we will return to the hall of the Branstock." But Signy said, "All is finished now. Vengeance has been wrought. I have no more reason to live. The Volsung race lives on in you, my brother, and that is my joy. I did not marry King Siggeir gladly, nor live with him gladly, but gladly will I die with him now." She went inside, and the flames engulfed the hall and all within perished. Thus was the vengeance of the Volsungs fulfilled. Sigurd thought on these deeds, the works of his father Sigmund and Sinfiotli, his father's kinsmen, as he rode through the forest and on what followed. Sigmund and Sinfiotli left King Siggeir's land and returned to the hall of the Branstock. Sigmund became a great king and Sinfiotli his captain. The story continues to tell how Sigmund married a woman named Borghild, and how Sinfiotli loved a woman also loved by Borghild's brother. Soon, battle came between the young men on opposite sides, and Sinfiotli killed Borghild's brother in fair combat. Sinfiotli returned home. To make peace with Borghild, Sigmund gave her a great sum of gold as compensation for her brother's death. The queen accepted it, saying, "Behold, this is my brother's worth. Let us speak no more of his slaying." She welcomed Sinfiotli to the hall of the Branstock. Yet, though she showed friendliness, her heart was bent on destroying Sinfiotli. That night, at a feast, Borghild went among the guests, bearing a horn of mead. She came to Sinfiotli and offered it. "Take this from my hands, friend of Sigmund," she said. But Sinfiotli saw the hatred in her eyes and said, "I will not drink from this horn. There is venom in the drink." To end the mockery, Sigmund, standing nearby, took the horn from Borghild, drank it at a draught, and none was harmed. The queen taunted Sinfiotli, "Must others drink your drink for you?" Later that night she came again, offering the horn. Sinfiotli saw her hatred and said once more, "There is venom in the drink, and I will not take it." Again Sigmund drank, and again the queen mocked him. A third time she came before offering the horn and said, "This is the one who fears to drink like a man. What kind of Volsung heart has he?" Sinfiotli saw the hatred but would not take the mead. Sigmund, growing weary, said to him, "Pour the drink through your beard." Sinfiotli thought Sigmund meant to pretend to drink and let it run down the floor, causing no quarrel with the queen. But Sigmund meant exactly that. Not understanding, Sinfiotli took the horn, raised it to his lips, and drank. The venom struck his heart, and he fell dead in the hall of the Brandstock. Grieved beyond measure, Sigmund would not let anyone touch Sinfiotli's body. He carried him out of the hall, through the woods to the seashore. There he found a boat drawn up with a man inside. Approaching, Sigmund saw the man was old and strangely tall. "I will take your burden from you," said the man. Sigmund laid Sinfiotli's body in the boat, thinking to follow. But as soon as the body was aboard, the boat left the shore without sail or oars. Watching the old man standing at the stern, Sigmund knew he was no mortal but Odin Allfather, the giver of the sword Gram. Sigmund returned to his hall. His queen died, and in time he married Hiordis, who became Sigurd's mother. Now Sigurd the Volsung, son of Sigmund and Hiordis, rode the forest paths, sword Gram by his side, and the golden helmet of the dragon's hoard upon his golden hair. Chapter 7 Brynhild in the House of Flame. The forest paths led Sigurd up a mountainside. At last he reached Hindfell, where the trees gave way to open sky and winds. There stood the House of Flame. Sigurd saw its black, high walls, surrounded by a fiery ring. As he rode closer, he heard the roaring fire circling the walls. Sitting on Grani, his proud horse, Sigurd gazed long at the blaze. Then he rode Grani straight into the fire. Another horse might have faltered, but Grani stood firm. Together they passed through the ring of flame. Inside was the courtyard, silent, without man, dog, or horse moving. Sigurd dismounted and opened a door. He saw a chamber hung with curtains embroidered with the pattern of a great tree, its 3 roots stretching across the walls. On a couch in the center lay a figure in deep sleep. A helmet rested on the head, and a breastplate covered the chest. Sigurd took the helmet off, revealing a heap of wondrous, gleaming woman's hair. This was the maiden the birds had told him of. He cut the breastplate's fastenings with his sword and gazed long upon her. Her face was beautiful but stern, like one who must subdue but cannot be subdued. Her arms and hands were strong and fair. Her proud mouth rested beneath strong, beautiful brows. Her eyes were closed. Then her eyes opened. She looked full at Sigurd. "Who are you that has awakened me?" she asked. "I am Sigurd, son of Sigmund of the Volsung race," he answered. "And you rode through the ring of fire to reach me?" "I did." She knelt on the couch, stretched out her arms to the light, and cried, "Hail, O day, and hail, O sons of day! O night and daughter of night, may your eyes bless us! Hail, O Aesir and Aesir! Hail, O vast fields of Midgard! Grant us wisdom, wise speech, healing, and that falsehood and cowardice may never come near." All this she spoke with wide, bright eyes, the blue of flowers, skies, and battle blades. Turning those eyes on Sigurd, she said, "I am Brynhild, once a Valkyrie, now a mortal maiden, who will taste death and all mortal sorrows. But there are things false and unbrave that I shall not know." She was the bravest, wisest, and most beautiful maiden in the world. Sigurd knew it was so. He laid his sword Gram at her feet and said her name, Brynhild. He told her how he had slain the dragon and heard the birds speak of her. She rose and bound her wondrous hair on her head. As she moved, it seemed she walked above the earth. Together they sat, and she told him wondrous and secret things, including how Odin sent her from Asgard to choose the slain for Valhalla and grant victory to chosen warriors. She told how she disobeyed Odin's will and was cast out of Asgard. Odin forced the thorn of the tree of sleep into her flesh so she would slumber until the bravest mortal man woke her. "Whoever breaks the breastplate's fastenings will take out the thorn," she said. "Odin made me vow that as mortal I shall wed none but the bravest in the world. To keep all others away, All-Father surrounded me with fire. And it was you, Sigurd, son of Sigmund, who came through the fire. You are the bravest, and I think the most beautiful, like Tyr, the god with the sword." She declared she would wed whoever passed the fire and claimed her as wife. They spoke fondly as the day passed. Then Sigurd heard Grani neigh repeatedly. He said to Brynhild, "Let me go from your eyes. I am destined to make the greatest name in the world. I have slain King Ligni and the dragon Fafnir, but that is little. I must endure all hardship to become the greatest, then I will return to you in the House of Flame." Brynhild answered, "Well spoken. Make your name great, endure what you must. I will wait, knowing that none but Sigurd can win through the fire that guards me." They gazed long at each other but spoke little. They held hands in farewell and pledged never to take another mate. As a token, Sigurd took the ring from his finger, the famed Andvari's ring, and placed it on Brynhild's. Chapter 8 Sigurd at the House of the Nibelungs. Sigurd left Hindfell and entered a kingdom ruled by the people called the Nibelungs, as his own people were called the Volsungs. The king of that land was named Juki. King Juki, his queen, and their sons warmly welcomed Sigurd when he arrived at their hall. Sigurd looked every bit a man destined to win the title of the world's greatest hero. He fought alongside the king's sons, Gunnar and Hogni, and the three won great fame, but Sigurd's name shone brightest of all. Upon returning from war, the hall of the Nibelungs filled with rejoicing. Sigurd's heart grew full of friendship for the Nibelung people. He loved the king's sons, Gunnar and Hogni, and swore brotherhood with them. From then on, they were as true brothers. King Juki also had a stepson, Guttorm, who was not included in their oath. Sigurd spent a winter in the hall of the Nibelungs. His heart ached for Brynhild, and he longed to ride to her at the House of Flame and bring her with him to the kingdom Juki offered. But he delayed, for he had sworn to aid his brothers yet more. One day, riding alone, he heard birds speaking. One said, "There is Sigurd who wears the wondrous helmet from Fafnir's hoard." Another said, "He does not know the helmet's power to change his form. Like Fafnir, he could look like any creature or man." A third added, "He knows not of this great magic." Sigurd returned to the hall and told his companions what the birds had said. He showed them the wondrous helmet and told how he had slain Fafnir the dragon and taken the mighty hoard. His sworn brothers rejoiced in his gifts. Yet more precious than gold or helmet was the memory of Brynhild he carried in his heart, though he spoke no word of her. The queen, Grimhild, mother of Gunnar, Hogni, and Guttorm, was wise and recognized Sigurd as the greatest warrior in the world. She wished to bind him to the Nibelungs not only by oaths but by marriage. Seeing his golden helmet and great arm ring, she resolved that Sigurd should wed her daughter, Gudrun, though neither Sigurd nor Gudrun knew of this plan. Grimhild watched Sigurd closely and saw his memory of Brynhild held him back from seeing Gudrun's beauty. Skilled in spells and potions and descended from Borghild's line, the same as the brew that ended Sinfiotli's life, she crafted a potion to erase Sigurd's memories. One night during a feast, Grimhild gave the potion to Gudrun, who passed it to Sigurd. He drank, then sat still among the guests like a man in a dream. For a day and night he was silent and lost. When riding with Gunnar and Hogni, they asked, "What have you lost, brother?" But Sigurd could not answer. What he had lost was all memory of Brynhild, the Valkyrie in the House of Flame. Now when he saw Gudrun, it was as if for the first time. Her hair was soft and flowing, her hands gentle, her eyes like wood flowers. She moved and spoke with a noble grace worthy of a princess. From the moment she first saw Sigurd riding Grani, his proud horse, with golden helmet crowning his hair, Gudrun had loved him. In spring, when wild swans nested at the lake, Gudrun went to watch. Sigurd rode by the pines and saw her. Her beauty changed the whole place. He stopped, listening as she sang to the swans, the song Valin made for his swan bride Alvid. Sigurd's heart filled with the memory of Gudrun. He watched her in the hall, embroidering with her mother, serving her father and brothers, and tenderness for her grew in his heart. One day Sigurd asked Gunnar and Hogni for Gudrun's hand. They rejoiced as if fortune had crowned them. They brought Sigurd before King Juki and Queen Grimhild, who seemed freed from care by the joy of this joining. When Gudrun heard the news, she said to her mother, "Oh mother, your wisdom should strengthen me to bear such joy. How shall I show him he is dear to me? I must try not to show it too much, lest he think me a foolish maiden. So great a warrior would not care for such love. I would be with him as a battle maiden." Sigurd and Gudrun were married, and the Nibelung kingdom rejoiced. Queen Grimhild believed that though the potion's power would fade, Sigurd's love for Gudrun would endure, and no other memory would return. Chapter 9, How Brynhild was won for Gunnar. Now united with the Nibelungs, Sigurd left Fafnir's hoard in their treasure house. He went again to his foster-father's kingdom, where King Alv and his mother Hiordis lived. Yet Sigurd remembered nothing of the House of Flame nor of Brynhild waiting there. King Juki died and Gunnar, Sigurd's sworn brother, became king. His mother wished him to marry, but Gunnar said he had found no maiden to choose. Yet when alone with Sigurd, Gunnar spoke often of a far-off maiden, a maiden told of by the wisest poets, who lived in a hall surrounded by flame, named Brynhild. Sigurd laughed, thinking his clever brother was fooled by tales. But if Gunnar was beguiled, why not help him win her? Thus Sigurd said. Gunnar asked for his aid and Sigurd swore he would. Together with Hogni, they rode toward Hindfell and soon saw the black walls surrounded by roaring fire. Gunnar rode to the fire on his horse Godi, but the horse would not go through. Believing he might succeed mounted on Sigurd's horse, Grani, Gunnar tried again. But Grani, sensing fear in his rider, reared and refused to pass the fire. The three men were troubled. At last, Hogni the Wise said, Sigurd could use his helmet's magic to change shapes with Gunnar, and then ride through the flame as Gunnar. Sigurd saw the pleading in his brother's eyes and agreed. By magic he changed shapes with Gunnar. Mounted on Grani and fearless, he rode through the wall of flame into the house of flame. Inside the hall he saw a woman with a bow shooting at a mark. She turned swiftly and he saw her face, beautiful, stern, with shining coils of hair and eyes like stars in an uncharted sea. The arrow in her hand seemed aimed at him. Yet it was not so. Brynhild threw down the bow and approached, walking as if above the earth. Looking at him she cried, Who are you who has come to me through the blazing wall? Gunnar, son of Juki of the Nibelung race, Sigurd answered. Are you the bravest in the world? She asked. I have ridden through the fire to come to you, he said. Whoever crosses that fire may claim me, Brynhild said. It is written in the runes. Yet I thought only one would come. Oh, I would wrestle with you with warrior weapons, she cried, grasping him and striving to throw him. They wrestled, matched in strength. At last, Sigurd caught her hand and bent back her finger, drawing off the ring he had given her, Andvari's ring. At that, Brynhild sank weakly to her knees. Sigurd lifted her in his arms, laid her across Grani, mounted behind her, and rode back through the ring of fire. Hogni and Gunnar waited, Gunnar wearing Sigurd's shape. Brynhild did not look upon them but hid her face. Sigurd resumed his own form and rode before them to the hall of the Nibelungs. Inside he found Gudrun playing with Sigmund, his young son. Sitting beside her, he told how, for brotherhood's sake, he had won Brynhild, how he had wrestled and overcome her, removing the ring he now wore. Even as he spoke, the potion's fog lifted from his mind. He remembered the house of flame and riding through the fire in his own form. Yet once more, as when he first drank the potion, he seemed lost in thought, watching his child and his wife as though in a dream. That day Gunnar and Hogni returned with Brynhild as Gunnar's bride. Gudrun rose to welcome her new sister-in-law. Sigurd looked at Brynhild and suddenly remembered everything. A heavy sigh burst from his heart, breaking the mail across his breast. Chapter 10 The Death of Sigurd. One day Brynhild, now Gunnar's queen, bathed with Sigurd's wife Gudrun. They were seldom together, and Brynhild often treated Gudrun with haughty disdain. As they bathed, Gudrun shook out her hair, sprinkling drops upon Brynhild. Angry, Brynhild moved away up the stream and Gudrun followed, unaware of her anger. Why do you go so far up the river, Brynhild? Gudrun asked. So that you won't shake your hair over me, Brynhild replied. Gudrun paused. Why speak so to me, sister? She remembered how from the start Brynhild had been harsh with her, without known cause. It was because Brynhild had loved Sigurd, the one who first rode through the fire and woke her by breaking the breastplate and removing the thorn of the tree of sleep. But Sigurd, she thought, had forgotten her, giving his love to another maiden. Wide with pride, Brynhild was filled with fierce anger. Why speak so to me, Brynhild? Gudrun repeated. It would be ill if drops from your hair fell on one so much above you, King Gunnar's wife, Brynhild said. You are married to a king, but not one braver than my lord, Gudrun replied. Gunnar is braver. Why compare Sigurd to him? Brynhild demanded. He slew the dragon Fafnir and took his hoard, said Gudrun. Gunnar rode the ring of fire. Perhaps you will say Sigurd did too, Brynhild taunted. Indeed, said an angry Gudrun. Sigurd rode it in Gunnar's shape and took the ring from your finger. Look, it is now mine. Gudrun held out her hand with Andvari's ring. Brynhild realized then the truth. Sigurd had passed through the fire twice, had wrestled her, taken the ring, and won her for another, mocking her with his deeds. Falsely had she been won. She, one of Odin's Valkyries, had been wed to one who was not the bravest, and deceit had come to her. Silent now, her pride turned to hatred of Sigurd. She went to Gunnar and told him she was deeply ashamed and could never find joy in his hall again. She vowed never to drink wine or embroider with gold there, nor speak kind words. She tore apart the web she was weaving and wept aloud, startling all with the proud queen's cries. Sigurd came to her and offered Fafnir's hoard in atonement, pleading forgiveness for forgetting her. But she answered, Too late you come, Sigurd. Now all I have is great anger. She told Gunnar she would forgive and love him if he killed Sigurd, but Gunnar refused, bound by brotherhood. She asked Hogni to slay Sigurd, promising the hoard if he did. But Hogni also refused, sworn brother as well. There remained Guttorm, Gunnar's half-brother, who was not bound by oath. Brynhild found Guttorm weak-minded and convinced him to kill Sigurd. She gave him a dish filled with serpent venom and wolf's flesh. After eating it, Guttorm became mad and obeyed her command to stab Sigurd in his sleep. Sigurd's last act was to throw his great sword Gram at Guttorm, cutting him in two. Brynhild, learning of the deed, went to Grani, Sigurd's proud horse. She leaned over the horse's neck, waiting. Grani heard Gudrun's cries for Sigurd, and his heart broke. He died. They carried Sigurd from the hall and placed him beside Brynhild. She took a sword and plunged it through her own heart. Thus died Brynhild, made mortal for disobeying Odin and won as a mortal's wife by deceit. Sigurd's horse Grani, the helmet, and his golden gear were placed on a great painted ship. Brynhild lay beside him, her hair shining and face stern and beautiful. They launched the ship on the sea, set it aflame, and Brynhild once again rested in the flames. Sigurd and Brynhild thus journeyed together to join Baldur and Nanna in Hel's realm. Gunnar and Hogni, fearing the evil in the hoard, cast the gold and jewels back into the river where the dwarf Andvari's treasure had first been found. The hoard sank forever beneath the waves, returning to the river maidens. But not for long. The coming Fimbul winter and Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, were near at hand. Chapter 11, The Twilight of the Gods. Snow fell on all the world's quarters. Icy winds blew from everywhere. The sun and moon hid behind storms. It was the Fimbul winter. No spring came, no summer followed, no autumn brought fruit, and winter pressed on and on. The Fimbul winter lasted 3 years. The first was the winter of winds, when storms roared, snows fell hard, and frost gripped the land. Men struggled to survive the dreadful cold. The second was the winter of the sword. Survivors fought over scraps of food. Brother fought brother. Mighty battles raged across the world. The third was the winter of the wolf. An ancient witch in the ironwood fed the wolf Managarm on unburied corpses and battled dead. The wolf grew fierce, destined to devour Mani, the moon. The champions in Valhalla saw their seats stained with blood. Managarm spat, a sign the final battle was near. A cock crowed deep underground near Hel's realm, the rusty red cock of Hel. His crow stirred the lower worlds. In Jotunheim, Filer, the crimson cock crowed, rousing the giants. High above in Asgard, the golden cock Gullincamber crowed, waking the champions in Valhalla. A dog barked deep in the earth, Garm, the bloody-jawed hound, barking in Knipa's cave. The dwarfs groaned before their stone doors. The world tree Yggdrasil groaned in all its branches as the giants moved their ship, and Muspelheim's hosts gathered their horses. Jotunheim, Muspelheim, and Hel waited anxiously. Would Fenrir the wolf break free? Without him loosed, the gods could not be destroyed. Then the rock was torn asunder, Fenrir burst his bonds. Garm barked again. The riders of Muspelheim galloped. Loki laughed. Heimdall blew his horn. Valhalla's 540 doors opened as 800 champions readied themselves. Odin took counsel with Mimir's severed head, drawn from the well of wisdom. By runes, the head spoke, telling Odin the best place to meet the enemy was on Vigard Plain and to fight so fiercely that evil would be destroyed, even if the world itself ended. The riders of Muspelheim reached Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, but it broke under their weight and they could not reach Asgard. Jormungand, the world-encircling serpent, rose from the sea and flooded the lands. The river carried Naglfar, the long-built ship of nails, and Hel's ship. Hreimr the giant steered Naglfar against the gods, while Loki captained Hel's ship, with the wolf Fenrir aboard, to the last battle. Since Bifrost was broken, gods and champions entered Vigard by crossing the waters of Thund. Odin led his champions, golden-helmeted, spear Gungnir in hand. Thor and Tyr rode beside him. In Mirkvid, the dark forest, the Vanir faced Muspelheim's host. From the broken Rainbow Bridge riders came, flames before and behind them. Njord and his giant wife Skadi stood fierce in armor. Freya and Frey with his battle-maiden Gerda fought fiercely. Surtur's fiery sword blazed brighter than any other except Frey's magic sword. Frey and Surtur clashed. Both perished, but Frey would have survived had he wielded his sword. Garm barked for the third time, wild and fierce as he broke loose, rushing to the gods' battle line. The eagle Hresvelgur screamed from heaven's edge. Skies split and Yggdrasil shook. The ships of giants and Hel arrived, followed by Muspelheim's riders, and Jormungand rose from the sea. Odin told his army, "We will give our lives and let the world be destroyed, but we shall fight so evil will not survive us." From Hel's ship came Fenrir the wolf, jaws wide from earth to sky. Odin fought him alone, for Thor faced Jormungand. Odin fell to Fenrir. Younger gods pressed forward. Vidar, the silent god, met the wolf, pressed his leather sandal-clad foot on Fenrir's lower jaw, grasped the upper jaw and tore out the wolf's throat. Thus Fenrir died. Jormungand tried to poison the world with venom, but Thor struck him down with his hammer Mjolnir. Thor stepped back 9 paces but was poisoned, blinded, and choked. Thor, the world's defender, died. Loki and Heimdall fought, each slew the other. Tyr, who had sacrificed his sword hand to bind Fenrir, fought bravely but was killed by Garm. Muspelheim riders descended amidst flames. Surtur's fire burned Yggdrasil and the world tree was consumed. But the fire also destroyed Surtur and his host. Wolves Hati and Managarm caught and devoured the sun and moon. Stars fell, darkness covered the world. Seas flooded the burnt earth, skies dimmed. At last, seas receded, and earth appeared anew, green and fair. New sun and new moon rose, daughters of the old, free from wolves chasing. 4 young gods stood atop the highest peak, Vidar and Vale, sons of Odin, and Modi and Magni, sons of Thor. Modi and Magni found Mjolnir and used it to slay the remaining monsters, Garm and Managarm. Vidar and Vale found golden tablets inscribed with the elder gods' runes, secrets of heaven beyond Asgard, of Gimli, untouched by fire. There Vili and Vi ruled, will and holiness. Baldur and Hoda came from Hel's realm, and the gods gathered, recalling all before Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Deep in a forest, 2 humans survived, untouched by Surtur's fire. They slept, then awoke to a green world. These 2, Lif and Lifthraiser, fed on morning dew and went forth to repopulate the earth. The end.